Made my racist coworker uncomfortable after he made a joke? Oh well, I am a 23-year-old woman and I've been at my job for about a year. I'm one of the youngest in my department and one of the few women of my background. I usually ignore workplace banter, but one coworker, Stephen, who is 34, has a habit of making subtle comments that don't sit right with me. At first, it was small things. He'd ask where I'm really from, or joke about how I must be great at handling spicy food. I never made a big deal out of it. But last week at lunch, he decides that apparently I am lucky they probably needed to hit their diversity quota. I'm guessing he always does this sort of thing, because everyone let out a good old chuckle. I almost hesitated, then I let it go, and I said, maybe, but it's crazy how I got promoted so fast, whilst you've been in the same role for like 10 years? Maybe they have a quota for that, too. I'm guessing everyone got uncomfortable because the room went dead silent. You could hear the clock on the wall almost. Stephen looked at me like a kicked dog and said that he was just joking. I didn't really care to hear it, so I just smiled. Later, my manager told me that Stephen felt humiliated and that I should have been more professional. I said I responded the same way he spoke to me. Yeah, Stephen, feeling humiliated and you should be more professional in the office. Look in the mirror, mate. Go into the gents and look in the mirror. What are we doing here? Stephen said that he was just joking with you. Well, why didn't you just say to him, I'm just joking with you, man. How do you like it? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Also, it's not really that he's just joking, is it? Because it's just racist, like, or xenophobic. I don't know exactly what your background is, but I can probably guess from what he's saying about, you know, where are you really from and handling spicy food, that it is just disgustingly racist. So it's not even joking in the first place. It's just racist. Now, if you like stories about racists getting completely destroyed, the next one is one that you're going to love as well. My dad claimed to be Mexican and severely humbled a lady. My mum and dad were at my mum's company Christmas party years back. There were drinks flowing and, in the elevator on their way to gather her things with a few colleagues, a lady started to go on a rant about Mexicans. A little bit of a theme in this one so far. You can imagine what she said and none of it was flattering. My dad has black hair. He also worked outside very often and was quite tanned still, despite it being winter. Mind you, his heritage is straight up English and Irish, maybe a hint of German. He listens to her rant while the elevator moves and, just before they got off, turns and says, "My dad is Mexican." This lady went dead white and stumbled over herself trying to apologize. She proceeded to apologize to my mother for about 6 months. Every person in the elevator, aside from this lady, knew that my dad was not at all Mexican. Some of them were though, so all of them refrained from telling her that he lied. She ended up leaving the company, believing that she'd mortally offended her co-workers, actually supervisors, if I remember correctly, husband, with her racist ranting. And I hope she thought twice before she opened her mouth again. I don't think she should have had to leave the company there, guys. I think she should have been fired. I'm sorry. Doesn't matter if anyone's Mexican or not. Someone should have reported her. That's crazy. Now, what's great is that people in the comments here are saying, as a Mexican, your dad is officially an honorary Mexican now. So he's doing the God's work. And he is standing up for Mexicans and also just minorities in general that do suffer racist abuse. Just like this, once again, just pure xenophobia. I don't really get why people like this exist. And I'm sorry, I've got to double down. Like, it should not take someone to be a fake Mexican to get this lady to leave the company. And it shouldn't take her to leave the company. Like, anyone in that elevator should have just said, you know, this is what just happened. One person corroborates it. I mean, ideally everyone, but all you need is one person. And surely she's gone. Like, you can't have someone like that working at a company. It doesn't matter how good they are at their job, like, at all. Or if anyone Mexican was in the lift or not. It's just racism. Get her out of there. It's actually pretty disgusting that she left seemingly on her own terms. Ridiculous. Also, why was she just upset when she got caught? Like, so pretty much, if there had been no Mexicans in the elevator and everyone would have agreed with her and said, yeah, you know what, you're so right, man, we hate them. She would have been like, yeah, we do. I hate them. But no, because one person was actually Mexican, or at least claimed to be Mexican, she then felt upset about it. What if other people in the elevator weren't Mexican themselves, but, I don't know, had Mexican friends or people they knew that were Mexican? Like, this woman is so stupid that she felt sorry because somebody was Mexican, but didn't feel sorry because of what she said in the first place to people that she thought weren't Mexican. I don't know. Dumb woman, get her out the company. Why does she get to work from home and I can't? At my job, we're supposed to be in the office a couple of days a week. I'm in almost every day, as that's my preference, while others stick to their work from home days quite strictly, which is also fine. But I have one colleague who I work with closely that previously came into the office, but now gets to work from home full time. And I'll add that she is great at her job and a joy to work with. Slowly, it was noticed by a few people that she was never in the office, and they started making comments how it was strange, she was lucky, she must have found a reason for an exemption or has some sort of special arrangement. They would look at me and wait for me to say something negative or complain, but I wouldn't say much other than that she works from home due to personal reasons, as it's not my info to share with others, and she is always available virtually if people need to meet or chat about a project. We were having a larger Teams meeting recently, and one of these nosy Nancys raised it in a passive-aggressive way, saying how she hasn't seen her in ages and she's always at home, and it would be great to see her in the office sometime, as their team all have to be in a couple of days a week. I sat there just sipping my tea, while my coworker dropped the bomb that her husband has been having seizures due to a rapidly growing brain tumour, and he can't be left alone. She went on to add how she wishes she could get out of the house more often, but can't even leave for coffee or groceries unless one of the kids is home, or she can get a friend or family member to stop by, and that the other option was to go on leave, but she felt like it would be a burden to the team and she can still get the work done from home. Let's just say the horrified looks people had and the awkward silence has ensured that hasn't come up since. Yeah, good. That is just what you want to see from this sort of story. People that are just being too nosy, getting it. Now, don't get me wrong. I probably, like at first, if I was a part of this person's team and they were never in and I didn't hear any explanation, I might be like, oh, how come they're not coming in? Like, we got to come in every day. What's going on here? But I feel like after about 1 minute of thinking about it, I'd probably think to myself, oh, yeah, there's probably a reason here that they're not coming in. And especially when someone says it's a personal reason to you, then you definitely do not bring it up. But I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I understand why people would be like, oh, where is she? But then surely you have a conversation and think, something's probably at play here. And then you just do not ask ever and you just leave it be. Ultimately, if she's still employed by the company, still doing her job well, which is amazing given the circumstances, who are you to question what's going on? Or if she just has months of unpaid leave and isn't there. Again, you can't say, it's a disgrace unless you know what's going on isn't something like this. But yeah, I mean, like, I suppose the main point is just chill out and just don't like go meddling when you don't need to. I hope that your coworker OP and her family are doing better, because what a terrible thing to be going through. Not helped by her colleague saying, where are you? It's unfair. Come into work right now. I'd rather have them safe. Years ago, I was struggling with keeping everyone safe on a trip to town. I had a couple of kids on feet and one in a wheelchair. The two on feet were absolutely determined to run away anytime my back was turned. As it happened, there was a pet store right next to the fabric store I needed to go to when one of the kids made a break for it into the parking lot. Instead of heading to the fabric store, I grabbed said child, plopped him on top of the kid in the wheelchair with instructions to not move a muscle, and I headed to the pet store instead. When we got inside, I headed straight to the leash and collar aisle, and I started the process of fitting the two on feet for harnesses and leashes. The kids thought this was a great adventure, and I even let them pick out their own colours. Then here comes some old Bitty with her pocket dog. She started out with just huffing and sighing, but within about 30 seconds, she evidently couldn't control herself any longer. That's the most cruel thing I've ever seen, treating children like dogs. From my crouched position, I replied, well, I'd rather have them treated like dogs than hit by a car. And I went back to fitting the harness that I was working on. All she could come up with was, well, I guess. The kids got their harnesses and leashes. I got my fabric. Nobody got hurt. Later on, when we went to Disney, we had people stopping us and offering up to $100 for the harnesses. Nope, sorry, you can hit up the pet store for your own. Okay, what I will say is reading this story, I was a little bit surprised by the fact that you, OP, went into a pet store to get your kids a lead and a harness. I'm presuming, by the way, that these aren't harnesses and leashes for kids, unless pet shops actually have these things for kids. I doubt they do. However, actually, maybe it's thinking on your feet. Very clever. And as you can see by the people in Disney who were probably like, whoa, that's a good idea. You've done well. I just can't get over the fact that your kids are wearing dog harnesses. Again, I might be wrong. If pet shops do have harnesses and leads for kids, I'm pretty confident they don't, because the clue's sort of in the name of the shop. But anyway, I completely agree with you. Like, it's better that they're safe. However, I would think it's a bit strange, like, that they're just knocking about in a dog harness. Now, if they were in like a normal kids harness, I would say 100% yes. And I have absolutely nothing against kids wearing harnesses with a lead on. You know, it's not like the best thing to see, because you'd be like, oh, well, they're human. It's not ideal. But also they are a young child who could easily just run into a road and die. So yes, I completely agree with you. I'd rather have them safe as well. However, this woman, I mean, I honestly, I can't like say she's like completely in the wrong. Because, like, imagine you're just walking along and you see two kids in dog harnesses with a leash. Again, they might not be dog harnesses. I'm happy to hold my hands up if they're not. But I'd be like, okay, what's going on here? So this is probably the one story that I've read so far where I'm a bit more like, well, whatever. You know what? Let me just look this up, right? Leash and collar pet store for kids. It's like, do they do that? They can't. No, it's all pet collars. I'm not being an idiot here, am I? I guess a kid could wear... This is the thing. Actually, like, is a dog harness... Would it not fit on a kid? I mean, it's pretty similar. You just put your arms through it. Maybe I take it back somewhat. Maybe it wouldn't look that weird. And also, I have to remember this. The kid doesn't have to walk on all fours like a dog. It's a great point there. Anyway, let's move on to the next story. Another post reminded me of my blind friend's story about getting her eyes examined. A friend of mine is BLIND blind, like both eyes removed as a toddler with no memory of vision blind. She has prosthetic eyes for both appearance and maintaining the sockets. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but apparently it can cause problems not having orbs in the orbital sockets. She told me the story of how once she went into her eye doctor, obviously to check on her sockets and other anatomy, not her eyes. And the new to her assistant that checked her in asked her to do a routine vision check. I'm completely blind, she told the assistant. Oh, we know, but just so we can get a proper exam of your eyes, we need a record of your vision. My friend kept insisting she was so very, very blind. The assistant kept insisting they needed the exam to check on her eyes. Finally, fed up, my friend popped out one of her prosthetic eyes and held it out to the assistant and said, "Here, now you can examine it all you want." The doctor was apparently apologetic. I asked why her guide dog wasn't a giveaway. She hadn't brought her, as it was just easier to have her husband take her. I don't know how her needing the assistant to guide her to the room wasn't a hint, but, well, I guess she figured it out eventually. Now, this sort of story I do not get at all, because I would feel like as soon as like you go in to an optometrist or whatever they're called, I've forgotten the word, and you check in or whatever and you say, yeah, I've got an appointment, then they ask for your name, and then surely immediately your information comes up with the fact that you are BLIND and you have two prosthetic eyes. So the assistant knows that. If you're brand new and your prosthetics are really good and you say, I'm blind, and you don't actually actively explain, like, I have two prosthetic eyes, this I don't really like. The assistant can just say what she said and that's all right. Like, you haven't actually, like, when you say you're completely blind, I don't know, I kind of get it from the assistant. Like, she might be like, well, we'll just do an examination for other reasons of your eye, etc, etc. Because completely blind, I mean, that is like, completely is a subjective word when someone is telling it to you. However, if you just said to them, I have two prosthetic eyes, then she would have been like, okay, well, obviously you can't see. However, I feel like it should have just been on your records anyway. The eye test itself would have been very funny, and I kind of feel like you should have just gone through with it and just taken the mick. Like, imagine the person or the assistant or the whatever, the doctor saying, you know, read me that third line on the chart as far down as you can. And you go, what chart? And they're like, the one on the wall. What wall? The one in this room. What room? I don't even know where I am. Because that is how blindness works. I mean, I'm not being an idiot, but I do feel like the assistant asking for just a basic vision test, and again, unless she has the information on her screen in front of her, which she should have done. Isn't that crazy of a suggestion? Like, if someone said to me, I'm deaf, completely deaf, and I said, okay, let's do a hearing test, that's not that stupid, because we could be checking for other things at the same time, or like pressure, etc., etc. I'm not trying to let the assistant off. I just think that without the information of I have 2 prosthetic eyes, which you didn't actually say, according to this, it's not the most crazy thing ever. I know you guys would disagree with me on that, and that's fine. I just feel like, just say I've got 2 prosthetic eyes. There you go. Now for our final story of this one. Unsolicited family planning advice didn't get him an answer he liked. A couple of months ago, I went out to visit my parents and some family for the holidays. I took an evening to go and visit my aunt and her husband during our trip. Now, I love my aunt's husband. He's a fantastic and loving dad and grandfather, and has always been one of my favourite people. He's pretty solid in his religious faith, but it translates into love, and he supports their family in a way that I've always been envious of. Both my kids are unplanned, having been told before the first that I couldn't have kids, and then my youngest is here despite 3 birth control methods failing, including a condom, planned B, and a month of the patch. We had another pregnancy less than a year after my youngest was born from failed birth control that I terminated, and my partner went for a vasectomy a month after that. My partner and I currently pay more in daycare than our mortgage, and our oldest also has an autoimmune condition. We have no familial support system. We're just barely making it financially and mentally, so we have decided that our youngest is definitely our last. During this visit, my aunt took my oldest to go work on her Lego advent calendar, while I chatted with her husband, Paul, in the living room, and my toddler played with the dogs. We discussed how cute my little one was, and Paul asked if we were having any more. Now, all my family knows how my last pregnancy ended. I'm not ashamed of it, so he actually already knew this before asking. I told him, no, my 2 were more than enough, and my partner is sterile now. We don't have the support or funds to care for another without making the 2 we have suffer. He said, you never know, the next one could be an angel. And I shot back before I could catch myself. Technically, the next one is an angel. Oh, wow. What a line, by the way. That might be one of the best single lines of rebuttal I've ever heard. That just sums up this subreddit so well. Wow. That is just 7 words that are just plucked from heaven, for want of a better phrase, but just pure perfection from OP. Sorry. That is just phenomenal. Anyway. We both had a cringe face for a moment, and then he quickly moved on to a new topic of conversation. I know he meant well because he loves his family and grandbabies. His family is everything to him. But it's like it didn't click that most people don't have a supportive family, and having kids these days is expensive and exhausting, even with support. Okay, and there we go. What a way to end this one. As I said, one of the most generational lines I've ever read, and I don't use the word generational lightly. Phenomenal stuff. Terrible from Paul. Like, absolutely terrible. The fact that he knew about you terminating your last pregnancy and still said that is disgusting. But also, I've got to say well done to you, because that is such a sensible decision you've made. Like, so many people, I feel like, do not give the required thought to having a child. And even when they've had a couple of children, they think, okay, I'll go again. And you make such a good point about it affecting your children's lives if you have a third one, because you're not going to make any more money per se. So then 2 into 3, or the money you have for 2 kids is now being split into 3. That's a big difference. And I think if more people acted and thought like this, the world would probably be a better place. I'm not saying to not have kids, by the way. Like, kids are great. I will hopefully have kids myself, and I definitely plan to. But if it's financially going to be extremely challenging to give them the life that they need and deserve, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't do it. And I do think more people should think like that. Fair play to you, OP. Paul, you're a gimp. Abusive mum had me disowned by entire family and banned from grandfather's funeral. This woman is insane. She has her entire side of the family wrapped around her finger, despite her being completely unhinged and psychopathic. She abused me and my sibling our entire lives, but she got less physical as she aged, and I thought that she'd fixed herself. Turns out, she just got sneaky. She's always telling lies that make herself out to be some victim, and over recent years, she's decided that I'm the one she wants to portray as her abuser, since I became vocal about her abuse of me. I cut contact with her a year ago when I found out she was drip feeding my family lies about me. Nasty stuff like she was raising my children because I'd abandoned them. She lived on my street, so she just saw them for a few minutes every other day. She'd been telling the family that I had terrible mental illness and not to bother me, explaining why most of them had barely returned my calls or messages in months. When I told them about my mother's lies, they looked at me like I was having an episode, and no one supported me. My grandfather died a week ago. He was my absolute world, and I'm devastated. Then, a few days ago, I get a call from my mother telling me that I've been disowned and I'm banned from attending the funeral. Her story as to why did not make sense whatsoever, and she flitted between telling me my grandmother must have said I'm disowned because she's mentally ailing, and mentioning that I'd said that my late son was not allowed to be mentioned in the funeral service. This absolutely did not happen. I never said this, to be clear. All of my family have blocked me. They're refusing to answer voicemails, calls, texts, even the door to me. None of them even bothered to contact me to ask what happened, and none of them will hear my side. They just took her at her word that I'm this monster after probably years of groundwork was laid by my mother. I've got no clue what she said or done, but I've done nothing to warrant this. Zero drama, zero negative words crossed. I sent flowers, sympathy cards, called, and gave condolences to everyone just before this kicked off, and everyone was kind and receptive. Unfortunately, I know that she's likely made up some terrible lie, hurting my bereaved elderly grandmother at the time of a most devastating loss, as well as the rest of my family, by stirring up drama in my name that I'm completely innocent of. She's robbed me of my ability to say my last goodbye to my grandfather. She's robbed me of the rest of my family. She has them all believing that I'm some monster, and the worst part is, I don't even know what she's accusing me of, because it was clearly so bad that they've all got me blocked on everything. They're refusing to return my calls and messages, even when I've explained that I've got no idea what is going on. Her last control over me was to devastate my grandmother in my name, ruin my reputation, and break my heart by causing me to be disowned and banned from the funeral. I'm at a literal snapping point now. She's gone too far. Smashing her windows and flooding the house with a hose pipe for the 5 hours she'll be at the funeral isn't enough. Help me out here. What can I do to make this thing suffer without landing myself in prison? Heck, I have a clean record and I'd probably get off without prison time for most crimes at this point. So I'm open to suggestions. I beg of you, this woman needs comeuppance. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the first post. Now, immediately, guys, I want you to get in the comments down below and let me know what you think in regards to the funeral. Should OP go? We're going to get a funeral update in just a second regarding what happened there. But before we get into that, drop your comments down below. What do you think OP should do? I mean, they've been disowned. I don't know if legally or whatever. They've been banned from the funeral. I'm not entirely sure how. I guess the grandma, right? OP's grandma has now gone along with her mum and said that she's banned. Just crazy, the manipulation that your mum OP has on the entire family. It's absolutely unbelievable. But as I said in the intro, there's a funeral update to come and then another further update. So without further ado, let's get into the first update. I mean, just quickly, it's worth me mentioning, I think you have to go to the funeral. We'll see what happens. But if you don't go to the funeral, it's an absolute disgrace. It's not what your grandfather would have wanted, even though you're banned. Anyway, enough waffle. Let's see what happened. Okay then, so here we are, the funeral updates. I went with my friend on copious amounts of anxiety meds. We were quickly seated and the service was lovely. Afterwards, I just walked past the family straight to the car with my head held high. One relative, my granddad's daughter-in-law, his son from a previous marriage's wife, sent me a kind message almost immediately after, saying she saw me and hoped I was alright. She said she'd have spoken to me to check in on me if she'd see me afterwards, but obviously I didn't hang around. We had a chat. It's nice to know there's one person, even if it's a distant relative, that isn't a flying monkey. I'm so proud that I fought through my anxiety and went. My alarm this morning said, "Do it for Granddad." Oh my gosh. I honestly don't know if I'd have had the courage to go without all of your words and encouragement, so thank you so much. Because of you all, I didn't let her win. I mean, that is great to hear. And I'm going to be honest, like looking through the comments on the original post and seeing how many comments OP replied to is actually insane. And you might think that sometimes people say, oh, thanks Reddit for the tips and advice. And they're just like, you know, they read a few comments and that's sort of that. They end up making their own mind up if you want to be cynical like me. But I mean, I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through the comments that OP has replied to on their profile. And it's crazy the influence that Reddit must have had. So, you know what? Fair play to Redditors. I probably don't say it enough, but, you know, it's a strange old community, but it's very tight-knit. And sometimes when they see wrong, or when they know that something must be changed and must be done, and they really do give great advice. One tip, actually, if you ever got a question in life, and you want to use the internet to try and find some sort of help, type in your question or type in the topic and then put the word Reddit afterwards, and that will bring up answers from Reddit, and they're almost always so much better than answers that are from generic articles or just from the internet in general. That's what I always do, and I could not recommend it enough, because you get real answers and real help from real people just like this. However, don't worry guys, there is actually one more update to come. It's the final update for now, I suppose, although this was posted just a couple of weeks ago. But let's get into it, the final update of this story. But the final update is that my aunt sent me weird messages after the funeral, still refusing to tell me what was said or what I'd done. It was confusing because she went between anger and telling me she'd hug me so tight the next time she saw me. She said she needed space, so we left that interaction on what seemed like a positive note. Oh, and it was wild that she said she didn't see me at the funeral, and if I'd have seen you, I'd have hugged you and brought you to the front row with us. And when I said I was sitting at the back, devastated, watching my family at the front row, unable to be there, supporting my sobbing grandmother, my aunt replied, "Oh yes, that was me. I actually asked your mother to tell you to stay away from us all." It seemed very bipolar. I asked her if there was any reason why no one would tell me directly what I was being accused of, and she didn't answer. She just said that she needed time. Right, okay. Now, I'd already decided I'd be cutting contact after this. The hurt was too much, but I'd hoped she'd eventually clarify the situation to me with time for my own closure. A couple of days after her last message to me, my aunt messaged my ex-husband trying to deliver a birthday gift for my son to his house personally instead of to mine. He politely replied that he didn't want to get involved, having had no contact with my family in years, and to either deal with me or send any gifts in the post. She replied with quite a nasty message. It actually read like it was written by my mother, which would explain the projection that happened later, saying that his reply clearly came from me and that I was using the children as weapons and to control people. Wow, how ironic. This entire conversation happened while I was blissfully unaware of all of it, having thought my aunt would be in touch soon to speak about what happened and mentioning giving her space. No one had asked me if they could see my children or contacted me personally about birthday gifts for my son. I'd have likely facilitated that for his birthday. But they went through my ex-husband, and when he said he didn't want to be involved with my family, we've been separated now for 5 years, my aunt insulted my ex and me, accused me of generally being a trashy person, said I was manipulating my ex with my version, that maybe there's a reason she won't let you hear our version because it won't be the same as hers. Tell him your version, please. Then I'd actually get to hear what I've done. Again, they were accusing me of horrid things and saying and doing things that I was entirely innocent of. And I knew nothing about it until he sent me the screenshots of their messages, his reply, and my aunt's final response lashing out. It was the last straw. I blocked them all and changed my phone number. I've no idea what's wrong with these people, but I never did find out what I was accused of. I thought my aunt was on her way to being ready to tell me about it soon, and I gave her the space she requested. Then a few days later, she was just spewing vitriol towards me and accusing me of more trash I didn't do and making wild assumptions. Again, all without ever speaking to me. I managed to become the bad guy all over again, and they likely will always believe their version. It's okay, I know mine. It just sucks. It just really cemented it for me that my mother must have been laying the groundwork for this for years. because I've had nothing but polite interactions with the family for years, and this clearly shows a high level of hostility about me and my character. This couldn't have happened overnight or with just one lie, surely. Yeah, OP, I completely agree, and it just makes it very confusing. I mean, to be honest, I'm confused, and I'm not involved in this story in any way, obviously. So I can't imagine how you feel. Like, imagine, actually put yourself in OP's shoes for a second. Like, I'll try and do it myself. All of a sudden, your entire family is just looking at you shadily, and they're not telling you what's going on. And you're trying to be your normal self with them, but they're being all like weird and standoffish. And then I suppose over the years, you work out that one of them really just detests you. Then you're not allowed to go all of a sudden to your granddad's funeral. I mean, that is mental, by the way. I went to my granddad's funeral, about a year ago now. And I was going to say it was great. It really wasn't great. But you know what I mean? It was lovely to be there. And it meant a lot being there. I can't imagine not being allowed to be there. It'd be ridiculous. Like, sorry, I can't. Wow, it was great. We had a great time. We did. It was lovely. You know what I mean? Okay, be serious for a second. But what I will say is this. Your family, and maybe it's just your mother, but I also put a massive blame on everyone else for just siding with her and not, like, doing their due diligence, reading between the lines and thinking, maybe I should actually qualify these statements that she's making. And again, we have no idea what they are, so it's tough to say what you're being accused of. But yeah, maybe think to yourself, maybe I should actually just think, maybe what I'm hearing is a little bit off. Let me find out the truth, or at least let me find out the other side of the story by speaking to you. But no, you're just going along with your mum. It's strange. And we haven't even talked about the abuse. Mental story, but somehow that's only the first one in this episode. There are 3 more to come. Let's get on to the second. You want us to break up? Fine. My mother-in-law is truly awful. She constantly makes remarks about me not deserving my fiancé. We are a sort of modern couple, with him bringing in 70% of the money and doing about 30% of the household chores, and me vice versa. It's not an exact math, of course, but we're content with the workload and bill division. And that should be that, by the way. That's a great balance. Congrats. Anyway, my mother-in-law thinks that I should do all the chores and calls my job a small part-time gig that I should be happy to do to help out without neglecting my duties. My fiancé disagrees, but going low contact is difficult when his father and his sister-in-law, my brother's wife, and I have gotten so close. So my fiancé, his brother and sister-in-law and I schemed to have me break up with him in front of his mum and just leave a wake of disastrous consequence to show her. Wow, that is so conniving and so good. That is actually unreal. So that's crazy. So let me get this straight. You, your fiancé, his brother, and then his wife, and also your fiancé and his brother's dad are all pranking your fiancé's mum? That is phenomenal. Okay, let's carry on. When she next made a remark at New Year's about it being time for him to find a traditional wife, I said she was right, and I broke it off. She was shocked immediately and tried to walk it back. My fiancé had a meltdown begging me to stay while my brother-in-law and his wife instigated by asking my mother-in-law if she was racist. They didn't tell me about this part, but it was funny because she doesn't seem to be racist in any real way. She started to panic as I stormed out, and my fiancé moved back home and has been bugging her to do all the things that I do on the daily, cooking and helping him with his New York time puzzles. And by the way, New York time puzzles are elite. And steaming his clothes and claiming she owes him for making me leave. So this woman has been calling me non-stop, begging to talk, and after just 8 days, she showed up at my work to full-on apologize, complete with a confession that blew me away. She legit admitted to thinking that I loved him enough to let her say whatever without consequence, and assumed that bugging me would get me to do more for her son so that he could have more time for her and time to relax. He currently works long hours, as owning a home is a goal for us, and though I also work doubles, she thinks that customer service isn't as hard as IT, even though working with the public is super exhausting. Okay, she's dumb then. I would think that customer service is much harder than IT, not knowing much about either sector, but goodness me, one involves working with people all the time, And we all know what people can be like. I mean, evidence this story. The other is IT. Yeah, a bit more technical, sure, but it's IT. Anyway, she cried and begged me to take him back and said he was lazy. When I, in air quotes, reluctantly agreed, she promised to leave me alone, and the next day sent me a gift basket with C's candy in it. My fiance admitted he started to be extra needy to her on purpose after the second day because he missed me and wanted to drive her crazy enough to get her to apologize quick. What a phenomenal story. I mean, this is just a phenomenal story. After the severity of the first one, to get a story like this as the second is just so good. Like, I just love that everyone bought into it so much. Your fiance even moving back in fully to sell this. It's just like, it's so good. Imagine the mum just being like, oh my God, what have I done? I have ruined my son's life and also my son's ex's life for what? Just because I wanted my son to have a bit more free time? Like, she must not have slept for this period of time. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So good. Now, I don't know about C's candy. I looked it up just to see if it was an actual thing. Pun not intended and not a pun. Apparently, it's a quite a nice candy. Somebody said in the comments, you know it's serious when C's candy gets involved. So yeah, maybe it's like the equivalent of I don't know, getting somebody flowers to apologize. It's top tier stuff, which I suppose makes sense. But yeah, genuinely wonderful story. But sadly, guys, that is the last fun story of this episode, and things now get slightly more serious once again. Revenge on a terrible neighbor. Years ago, I rented a townhouse while working on a studio contract. The house was nice, 2-bedroom that I shared with my girlfriend, now my wife. There was a single attached garage, which is a main part of the story. The next door neighbor, who we'll call Chad, was a real piece of work. He was mid-30s, balding, which he tried to hide with a buzz cut, and one of the shortest men I've ever met. He compensated for his lack of height by having a giant lifted custom pickup truck that was too tall to park in his garage. His other pride and joy was a heavily modified Honda Civic, which he liked to rev the engine loudly most days. Chad had 4 friends who he'd sit with at the end of his driveway and drink beer with all day, leaving empty cans everywhere. When I started renting the house in the spring, Chad was initially friendly, offering to move his car to allow the movers to easier access the house. He parked in both spots, despite a visitor lot right across the street. After the movers left, Chad mentioned that the previous tenants let him use their garage for his car in the winter, as his was full of exercise equipment and the sweet motorcycle he was building. Goodness me, I mean, that is crazy. Just asking to use and actually being allowed to use someone else's property. The old tenants must have been very nice, fair play. I told him that the landlord hadn't given me the key or the access code yet, and the only way I could open the garage was from the inside. Chad mentioned that neither his keys nor the code he had worked anymore either. A bit later, when I was talking to the landlord and mentioned Chad and the garage, he told me to never share the code, the keys, or the garage itself with Chad. The previous tenants had been robbed just after Christmas, the reason why they moved away, and the landlord suspected that Chad and his friends had been the ones responsible, despite there being no evidence. Wow. The landlord changed the locks and access code as part of cleaning up the house for a next tenant. A month or so later, I learned from another neighbor that Chad's dad had been a local cop and died when Chad was a teenager, and the police gave him a pass on disturbance calls and the like, something he took advantage of. Chad kept pressuring me to give him access to my garage and got really angry when I finally told him no. Maybe his temper stemmed from his lack of height or some other factor, but he was upset enough that his friends had to hold him back from physically attacking me. From that point on, I'd find empty beer cans on my lawn. He and his friends would catcall my wife when they saw her alone. He would park his truck blocking access to my driveway, would blast music at all hours of the day and night, and just do other things to make a nuisance of himself. As winter came, things got worse, as he was no longer allowed to park his truck on the street and was denied parking in the visitor lot. Later, some kids vandalized the car cover to his Honda and scratched the paint, which he blamed on me for not letting him use my garage. After the new year, I found all of my exterior Christmas decorations ripped off the house and destroyed on my lawn. I decided to take some revenge. Starting that night, which was the beginning of a really bad cold snap, I watered his car, using the garden hose to spray it down, from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. every 30 minutes or so. By the next morning, a thick layer of ice covered his Fast and Furious mobile, pinning it to his driveway. I hid the garden hose in my garage before anyone saw it. When Chad saw the state of his car, his rage was legendary. He screamed, yelled, and woke up the entire neighborhood with his antics. The police and fire department came, did nothing, and left. Chad's friends tried to use various power tools to free his car, and one of them actually cut into one of the tires and fender using a sawzall. About a week later, the ice had thinned enough that the car popped free. Chad broke the windshield trying to remove large chunks of ice. That is the best, isn't it? When you're trying to sort of help a bad situation and you just make it worse. So good. That spring, my work contract ended and I moved away, free of Chad. I decided to share this story as I'm still good friends with my previous landlord, and he told me that Chad and his friends are now in jail after they got caught robbing a convenience store just after the recent holidays. Why does that not surprise me? Well, all I can say to this is that Chad and his pals are just terrible people. I do not understand why the previous tenants let him use their garage. Maybe, to be fair, they're just lovely people and actually weren't ever going to use it and were like, sure thing. But I mean, Chad just should have felt so lucky and like grateful that he was allowed to use somebody else's property for his stuff. But no, he said, actually, I'm just going to break in and steal your stuff as well. Just like taking liberties. Yeah, I mean, this guy and his mates probably just do deserve to end up in jail. And I hope that happens. I don't think there's any more I can say than that. Good revenge, but I feel like more needs to be done. Yeah, it's tough about his dad, but that doesn't excuse his actions now. Now moving on to our final story of this one. And I've just had a quick scan through, guys. And I've noticed that one of the characters is a little bit close to home. Anyway, I ruined my ex-best friend's reputation for spreading rumors about me. I just remembered this story from high school, and I thought you guys would find some enjoyment out of it. When I was a sophomore in high school, my best friend of 5 years, let's call her Sarah, blocked me on everything and refused to acknowledge my presence. When I tried to talk to her, she would immediately walk away. If I was speaking in class, she'd put her head down and cover her ears. When I had mutual friends ask her if I did something wrong, she would just say, I just got tired of her. She's annoying and loud. I have a more chill aura and she's ruining my vibe. Now, you know what, guys? When somebody says they have a chill aura, 99% of the time, it definitely means they have a chill aura. Not embarrassing. I mean, not one of the most embarrassing things you could possibly say about yourself ever. Humility. Yeah? Learn some, Sarah. Anyway, let's carry on. Her other reasons for cutting me off, according to mutual friends, were 1. I was too clingy for always expecting to sit next to her at lunch. 2. I was too needy for wanting to call her after school once or twice a week. And 3. Her mum, whom I had only met once when I was 11 during a field trip, didn't like me. I was heartbroken, but I accepted her choice. I'm not going to beg for someone to love me if they do not want to. However, when a mutual friend told me that Sarah was telling people that I was fat, ugly, and disgusting, and also spreading around my SA story from the year prior and telling people that I was 100% lying about it, we went to a small school of only 300 people, including staff and teachers, so news travels quickly. I saw red. You don't have to like me, but spreading false info about a deeply traumatic experience and saying I lied about it? So on to the revenge. Sarah was a deeply delusional person when it came to relationships. In freshman year of high school, she had a huge crush on our 25-year-old married English teacher. She bought baby clothes, embroidered his children's names on them. What? Embroidered his children's names on them and then put them in a box at the foot of her bed. That is the most that is so twisted. What the hell? I mean, that's not even like weird. That's just downright deranged. Sorry. When I asked her why the actual F she would do that, she said it was for when she turned 18 and she could finally steal him from his wife. Never mind the fact that the clothes would obviously then be too small for his kids by that time, but that is freaking crazy. After she moved on from our teacher, she then attached herself to a boy in our grade. We'll call him Jack. Now, I will be honest here, guys. This was the name that I saw when I just quickly scanned this story. And I have to interject here and say, I do not blame Sarah for this at all. This has happened to me multiple times in my life, and it will happen to me again. Nothing I can do about it. It's just my name and how cool I am. I like to think that at times it's because I have a very chill aura about me. I might be wrong. Anyway, Jack was in a relationship of 5 or 6 months with his girlfriend, Tiff. Sarah was convinced that she could home wreck them and made a public Instagram account to post poems about Jack. Is this story about me? I'm not sure. Not too bad, right? Well, actually, these poems were about how Tiff was an awful person and she deserved to die so that Sarah and Jack could be together. The only layer of anonymity in this account was the fact that the name was only her initials. Jesus. I knew about the account, and once I heard what she'd been spreading around about my appearance and assault, my 15-year-old self knew exactly how to get back at her. I knew Jack's sister from a club that we did a few years prior. We weren't friends, but were definitely friendly. One morning, I saw her in the halls, and I asked if Jack was still dating Tiff. She said, yeah, why? I told her, oh, that's so weird because I actually found this Instagram account that Sarah made that made me think that maybe they were a thing now. I showed her the account, and of course, she took screenshots of everything and sent it to Jack. 5 hours later, the account was deleted, and Sarah didn't come to school for 2 days. I heard from mutual friends that Jack and Tiff both sent her long, not so nicely worded texts about her behaviour and the account. Sarah got a reputation for the rest of high school for being crazy, delusional, and boy crazy. Jack's sister never told anyone that I was the one who told her about the account, so nobody ever found out that I was the one who told her. We are now in our early 20s, and since high school, I have lost 100 pounds. Wow. Had a glow up, and by the way, she's put this in air quotes. She's not saying, I suppose, that she's now really good looking, but yeah, probably had a glow up. If you lose 100 pounds, that's absolutely insane. Have a loving fiance that I started dating senior year of high school, a well-paying career, and a large support system of loving friends. Sarah, on the other hand, has never been in a relationship. I would argue against that. I think she's been in a couple of relationships with her old English teacher and Jack. They were just pretty one-sided relationships. Anyway, she has no friends. She dropped out of college junior year. She lives with her parents and still can't drive. Hang on a second. I'm not in a relationship currently. I do have friends that didn't drop out of college junior year, but I am also living with my parents right now, and I also don't drive. I'm feeling slightly attacked here. Anyway, was I a jerk? Definitely. Was it the right thing to do? Probably not. Do I regret it? A little bit. But at least no one believed her anymore when she talked about how much I was lying about one of the most traumatic things that has ever happened to me. And that is the main point, I think, at the end there. Like, to lie about that is just ridiculous. And when I say lie, I of course mean that Sarah is the one lying, not OP, obviously. I mean, that is crazy. She is obviously, as I said, a deranged individual anyway. But there is a limit, isn't there? And obviously we got to that when she said that you were fat, ugly, and disgusting. That's just bullying. But on top of that, spreading that your essay, well, first of all, spreading around your essay story, which I presume not everyone in the school knew about, obviously, and then saying you lied about it on top of that. So first of all, telling people about what your actual trauma is, ridiculous, and then saying, oh, actually, no, but she just did it for attention, or maybe not that, but just none of it's true, is genuinely crazy. I think that should be illegal. Like bullying is one thing, but then like telling people about someone's trauma, which is, you know, obviously illegal in itself, the trauma, then saying they lied about it, like that. I know you're only like 15 or whatever here, but is that not some sort of like defamation? Like, people genuinely would unalive themselves for stuff like this. That has to be illegal. It has to be. You know, sometimes it's weird. I feel like people only get in trouble when people unalive themselves or serious things happen to the individual that people have bullied or said stuff like this. And yeah, I hold my hands up. Like, sometimes I do think back to some things that I might have said when I was young and dumb and think, Jesus, that was a terrible thing to say, or I shouldn't have acted like that because it could have had this effect. Same on to me, you know. But, and I'm not for 1 second saying, oh, they were 15. You can't, like, you got to allow them whatever a little bit. No, I mean, this is crazy. And I do think that, like, stuff should be done about that. She should be either expelled at the very least or, like, you know, charged. is mental. Now, final thing to say is you should not feel bad at all about anything you've done here. As I've just mentioned, like, she's created this life for herself, and you like disclosing to Jack's sister that it was actually Sarah's account is not the reason why she has no friends and no life and, you know, whatever right now. That isn't the reason. She's done that to herself. Yes, it's a small part of it, but that isn't the reason. Like, this would have happened anyway, whether you intervened or not. So, I don't know. Ridiculous. Am I the jerk for punching my husband's ex-wife? My husband's ex-wife, who we will call Shelley, hates me, and I'm not a big fan of hers either. She has high conflicts and has been putting my stepson in the middle of her rubbish since the beginning. She had him listen at our door and report back what I said. She even called CPS on me for having a medical marijuana card. Nothing came of it. She'll tell anyone that will listen that I stole her family from her and I destroyed her life. My husband had been divorced from her for 8 years when I met him. I just think that backstory is important. A couple of days ago, I took our daughter, who was 4, to the park in our subdivision to play. As I was pushing her on the swings, I saw Shelley pull up. I immediately grabbed my daughter and started walking back home. Shelley began to follow me and started yelling insults and threats at me. I dialed 911 and I told them what was going on, so we stayed on the line. She called my daughter a half-breed, I'm black and my husband is white, and then continued to follow me down the street hurling insults. I told her to leave us alone and I've called the police, but that just made her more aggressive. By that point I was in front of my house and my garage door was up, so I told my daughter to go inside and get her dad. I turn around and Shelley is running full speed towards me with her arm drawn back. I punched her dead in the throat. She fell on the ground and was gasping for air. I dropped to the ground to ask if she was okay, but she continued to try to swing at me as she gasped for air. The cops then arrived and put her in handcuffs because she started to fight them. They put us in separate areas and talked to us. She told them that I hit her first, but my husband was already outside with the footage ready to show the police. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes. This is where people are saying I'm wrong. We live in a small town and people got wind of what happened, and almost everyone is saying I'm wrong because Shelley is 5'4", maybe 130 pounds, and I'm 5'10" and weigh about 180 and I weightlift. People are saying I should have gone easier on her and I could have really hurt her. They've also said that I've done enough and charges weren't necessary. Of course, my husband, my stepson and my family are on my side, but I've gotten some nasty messages from people in my town calling me a monster and a bully. I feel like I was just defending myself, but I want some unbiased opinions because now I feel like I might have taken it too far and I'm starting to doubt myself. So, am I the jerk here? Alright, let's get into some comments straight away before I give my thoughts and then we get into the update. Somebody said, "You're not the jerk. You were defending yourself against a physical threat and your actions were reasonable given the circumstances. Shelley's behaviour was unacceptable and she escalated the situation by following you, yelling insults and making threats. When she charged at you with her arm drawn back, you had every right to protect yourself. The criticism from people in your town seems misguided, focusing on your physical size and strength rather than the facts of the situation. The fact that Shelley is smaller than you doesn't mean you should have allowed her to attack you without defending yourself. It's also important to note that Shelley's behaviour has been problematic for a long time, including putting your stepson in the middle of her conflicts and making false reports to CPS. Her actions have shown a pattern of aggression and manipulation. You did the right thing by defending yourself and pressing charges. Don't let the opinions of others make you doubt your actions. You prioritize your safety and the safety of your child, and that is something to be proud of." Another commenter agreed, "You're not the jerk. Shelley is an idiot to try and swing on someone bigger, taller, and stronger than her. And why? Because you didn't react to her insults? Instead, you asked her to leave you alone and then called the cops. Had you not turned around and seen her running towards you, ready to hit you, she could have caused you great damage. Instead, you threw one punch to keep her away. Too bad your fist is at her throat level. She should have thought about that before she tried to attack you. Do not doubt yourself. You defended yourself from someone who intended to do you harm. You didn't continue to wail on her. You weren't the aggressor. She stepped on your property and threatened you and your child. The people in your town are idiots. Fight rumor with truth. Post the footage. Show the charges. You are within your rights, period. And I defy anyone to have been in the same position who wouldn't have gotten into a defensive mode like you did. Wow, what a comment. I agree with all of that, by the way. Somebody else said, not the jerk, it's all recorded from the time she approached you at the park and attacked you at your home. I wonder if it's possible to charge her with a hate crime. OP replied to this, they charged her with assault and I'm getting a restraining order. Somebody also said, OP should tell her husband to get full custody of his son, which is interesting. She replied saying, my stepson is 18 and has lived with us since he was 8. Wow, so her husband already does have full custody then. Well, I suppose maybe not, but he's lived with you for a long time now, which is good. And finally, somebody said, nope, you're not the jerk. She came at you while you were trying to keep your child safe. And 8 years, she needs to move on. It's a great point, really. But OP says, I don't think she ever will. My husband is a great guy, and she really did mess up. He truly loved her, but she was too toxic to accept it. Now, I think she has a lot of regrets. Her aggression definitely got worse after I had my daughter because she wanted a girl. Alright, I would normally give my thoughts here, but I feel like I completely agree with the comments. OP is not the jerk. It's very simple. This woman is crazy. So, there's no point. Let's just get into the update. Now, this was posted just 1 day after the original post. It hasn't even been 24 hours since my last post, but I feel you guys deserve an update and for me to clarify some things. Firstly, my daughter and I are okay, and thank you all so much for your support. My daughter heard what was said, but fortunately has no idea what it means. She also didn't see any of the physical violence that occurred. Secondly, Shelly is still in jail. Luckily for us, her family doesn't even like her, so no one's bailed her out. She also had a warrant, so she'll probably be sitting there for a while. Next, for everyone worried about my stepson. He's just my son in our house. Thank you so much for the concern, but he's 18 years old, and I've been his mother figure for the past 10. He knows his mum's antics, and he's in therapy, and he's okay. For the people that private messaged me to say that I alienated my stepson from his mum, well, shame on you. You guys have no idea what this kid has dealt with through the years, and he is so strong. I also would like to clarify that I did press charges. I spoke to my lawyer, who's my aunt, and she said I actually have plenty of evidence from over the years to sue Shelly for the emotional pain she's caused me, and I will be pursuing that. I'm going to make it hurt, so she knows that this behaviour will not be tolerated. I'm also in the process of getting a restraining order, which will not take long at all, given all of the evidence. Lastly, this whole situation has been so eye-opening about the lack of support I have living in this town. I've stayed because I thought it was best for my family, but after speaking with my husband and stepson, we all realised it's best for everyone if we move and start fresh. If anyone has suggestions of diverse places to move with a good school system for our daughter, please comment down below. I want to thank you all so much again for your help. I felt more support from strangers on the internet than I have from the community I've lived in for years. I will continue to keep you all updated with whatever I can as I continue the process. Let's just finish off with a couple of relevant comments. Somebody asked what was the reason for OP's husband's divorce from his ex, and unbelievably OP said she hit him in front of their son and fractured his eye socket. I mean, look, we already knew that Shelly was crazy, but yes, that is mental. Somebody else commented, make sure Shelly actually has enough assets and income to make suing her worth it. You know the old saying, you can't get blood out of a turnip. She sounds massively emotionally unregulated since she had a warrant out already. Emotionally unregulated people often can't hold jobs and really don't have money. OP says she is a master esthetician with her own spa. She has money, even though she says she doesn't. Somebody else commented, if you're willing to move to Scotland, we take kick butt mums just fine here. Other than that, I can't help. But you were absolutely right in what you did, and I agree, make it hurt. Teach the lesson that she best not come back for more. And somebody asked, based on OP's background, can she relocate to any city and find a job? OP says, I'm actually a private financial advisor, so I work from home mostly. My husband is an engineer, and he can get work just about anywhere. Well, that is good to hear. Okay, and there we go. That is a story for now, I suppose. Now, I feel like the comments here, the comments that I picked out, sort of covered the main points in terms of how crazy Shelly is, and yeah, the fact that she is just obviously slightly messed up in the head and is still, I don't know, living her old relationship and hoping that was still a thing. I'm not sure what's going on there. I don't really need to comment anymore. It's obvious that OP is not the jerk here for what she did in defending herself on her property and defending her child. However, I do think that we need to talk a bit more about her neighborhood and how unsupportive and almost anti-OP they seem to be, and why that is. Now, I don't want to jump to any conclusions here, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to question why. Like, it's just strange that they're siding with somebody who is so obviously crazy over you. I think to side with someone, surely they must know about, like, I don't know, unless they've just heard down the grapevine that, oh, someone punched somebody in the throat, and that's it. Surely you'd ask for more context there and be like, oh no, that's actually OP's husband's ex from years ago, and she's been sort of going after the new relationship for years. She hasn't moved on at all. She's pretty mental. Like, she's tried to get her son to do lots of things, etc, etc, etc. I do agree though with some of the comments, like, surely just show the footage and then be done with it, and you'd stop all the sort of like weird rumor and people going against you, which I can't quite work out why. Maybe there's more going on here, but like, surely if people know that she's been physically abusive for more than 10 years, that's enough for them to side with you, not her. I mean, I said I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I think you guys know what I mean there, but you know what, I will. OP is a black woman in a small town. Maybe that's all I need to say. Let me know if you agree with me in the comments down below, but yes, it does sound like you should probably move to a town that is a little more inclusive. Okay, now moving on to our second story of this episode. Am I the jerk for not wanting my husband to go away for the weekend for his best friend's bachelor party when I'm 37 weeks pregnant? Now, the original post for this one came back in March of 2019. My husband's best friend got engaged, and my husband is in the wedding party. He's not the best man, but is doing most of the planning for the bachelor party. In his friend group, they usually do a golf weekend. Also, this is likely the last bachelor party in the group, as the rest of the guys are already married. Well, who's to say one of them might be divorced and they might go again? The stats would say that's actually pretty likely. Anyway, let's carry on. I'll stop being silly. However, we have a 2-year-old, and I'm currently pregnant with our second child, and due on August 25th. This was posted March 25th, by the way. When he started planning the bachelor party, I told him that planning something earlier in the summer would give him a higher chance of going for the full weekend. I originally framed it as not wanting to be stuck watching our toddler by myself for a full weekend in my 3rd trimester while he's out golfing, which was a mistake. I should have framed it as not wanting him to go away for a weekend so close to my due date. I don't know. I think that isn't a mistake at all. The way you phrased it the first time is completely fair, and if he was reasonable, he'd probably say, yeah, that makes sense to me, and I'd pick an earlier date. Anyway, let's carry on. They finally picked a date for the bachelor weekend. It's August the 8th, so I'll be almost 38 weeks pregnant and considered full term. Technically, I'll be 38 weeks the day he plans to get back, so about 2 weeks before my actual due date. The bachelor party will be about 2 hours away without traffic. On previous golf weekends, he's been terrible about keeping his phone charged, and it can be hard to get in touch with him. Also, while he doesn't drink, he does smoke, and he would most likely be smoking the whole weekend. Now, he thinks that as long as he gets someone to watch our toddler while he's gone, it's fine to go for the full weekend, 2 to 3 nights. This makes me incredibly nervous. I'm willing to compromise and agree to an overnight plus a day of golf. I'd also want him to keep his phone on and charged at all times, and ask that he stay sober in case I go into labour. He seemed to think this was an unreasonable compromise when I initially brought it up. Since then, he is unwilling to discuss it until they have finalised the plans for the weekend. I'm of the mindset that there are very few times in our marriage where my needs, wants and desires take priority over his, but that this is one of them. Yes, obviously. So, Reddit, am I the jerk for not wanting him to go to a bachelor party for 2 to 3 nights so close to my due date? Obviously not. How is this even a post? This is not a good sign for your husband, I'm sorry. The fact that you're even having to make this post is really tough. Let's get into an immediate update here because I don't even need to give my thoughts. The answer's so obvious. Update. I tried to talk to my husband about the bachelor party, and I specifically asked how they arrived at that weekend. My husband said the only requirement was that every groomsman be able to attend, and that he threw out 2 dates, one in July and the one 2 weeks before my due date. The July date didn't work for some of the groomsmen, so he picked the August date. Those were the only 2 weekends discussed, and he apparently picked both. His argument is that if I went into labour when he was at work and happened to be on a long call, it could take him over 2 hours to get home. So why is it not okay to plan a trip that would take him the same distance away? What? That's probably the worst argument that I've ever heard. I tried to explain that there's a difference between work, where if he can't get home it's because someone is seriously injured or something is burning down, and a bachelor party. He doesn't see it that way and just wants to be there for his friend. In his head, the due date is August 25th, and there's no chance that the baby could possibly come 2 weeks early. That's right, because babies are never born prematurely. We didn't get a chance to discuss duration of the weekend or the possibility of not smoking before the conversation dissolved. He got annoyed when I brought that he has a poor track record at keeping in touch during these things, although he was pretty angry throughout the entire conversation, to be honest. I tried to remain calm throughout the convo, but I did cry and I was the one to walk away first. Yeah, fair enough. After work today, I'm getting my son and we're going to stay with my parents. All right, let's jump into some comments. Now, this one is very interesting and I don't agree with it. They say OP is not the jerk. However, they also say this. I get that it's a big ask, but his best friend is getting married and he's only going to be 2 hours away. I think that as long as he keeps his phone charged and he stays sober enough to drive, it's not unreasonable that he wants to attend this event that he planned. But I also get why you're nervous. Could he tentatively plan to attend and then check in with your doctor to see how likely it is you're going to go into labour closer to the actual date? Somebody replied to this though. Doctors can guess, but they're frequently wrong. Lots of women are told they'll have their baby any day now at 36 weeks and go overdue, or told there's no way the baby is coming yet and go into labour within a week. 2 hours away is unlikely to be a huge deal, but if he's drinking and has to sober up first, or if she has a precipitous labour, he could miss the birth entirely. Second babies often come faster too. Personally, I wouldn't be willing to risk that. Now, somebody else sort of replied to everything, all the comments here in general. I also, I can't quite believe what I'm reading here with the comments overall, and I'll give my thoughts on them after this, but they said, not the jerk, the comments here are just so frustrating. Yes, OP's husband will have to make the immense sacrifice of staying sober at a bachelor party. Woe is him, how could he possibly survive? I'm assuming that both parties made the decision to have another kid. In making that decision, OP has sacrificed 9 months of alcohol, getting high at parties, eating what she wants, any number of other things. I don't care if he organised and could have planned it on another day. I don't care if it's the last bachelor party of the group. OP and the baby come first. Not just when it's easy and convenient, but all the time. If my husband went to something like this after I'd asked him not to, and he missed the birth of our child, or showed up drunk or high while I was in labour, it would be the end of my marriage. I honestly cannot believe how many people are saying OP is unreasonable. If you can't stay sober for 1 weekend for your family, you have a problem. Now, amazingly, guys, and I can't quite believe I'm saying this either, the verdict on the original post on r/AmITheJerk was that there are actually no jerks here. And that, yes, what OP is saying is obviously very, very fair, very, very reasonable. But what OP's husband is demanding or wants as well is also reasonable, and therefore he's not the jerk. I could not disagree with this more. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, but from my perspective, I completely agree with the final comment here. OP has sacrificed so much to have the baby, and I know it's annoying, right? You want to go to this bachelor party that you've organised, but it's one bachelor party. It's really not that big of a deal. Also, the fact that you're being allowed to go overnight and have a full golf day as well, I think is a pretty great offer you've got there from your wife. You're not going to get a much better offer than that. I think a lot of women and partners, whichever way around it is, would be like, no, you're not going at all. I think that would be very reasonable. I mean, if my pregnant wife said that to me, I'd be like, you know what? Yeah. Also, I don't think this would even have to happen. Like, you just would stay at home if you're a good person. So stupid. Like, why is he being such a terrible person about this? I can't quite work it out. Anyway, there's an update to this one that came 5 months later on August the 11th. So that is the weekend of the bachelor party. Well, just after it. I cannot wait to see what happened. I really cannot wait to see what conclusion or what sort of agreement these guys came to. Let's get into it. So, the bachelor party was this weekend. My husband and I ultimately decided to wait until the doctor's appointment the week before the party to make a decision. If she said, the baby is coming any day now, he was going to go for the day. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law volunteered to watch our son for the weekend. And it turns out that my parents are moving and wound up moving to an apartment that is 5 minutes from our house. So they'd be around in case I happen to go into labour. I just think that's stupid anyway. Sorry, guys. Like, your husband has to be there if there's any chance of you going into labour at all. I'm saying this as a guy that would love to go to a bachelor party, by the way. Like, I haven't organised one, and I can understand. If you organise one, it's a massive deal, and maybe it's the last one you're going to go to. You're going to want to be there, and it's going to be a great weekend. But some things take priority. Like, it's not even a debate in my head. I put myself in this position right now with my best mates in the world going to one of their bachelor parties that I've organised. It's not even up for discussion. I can't even believe this is a post, as I've said. We're going to finish it though, even though I'm actually getting like slightly perturbed by this, I'm going to be honest. Anyway, the OB said she didn't think the baby would come this weekend. So we decided that my husband would go to the bachelor party for 2 nights with the stipulation that he remain sober and be ready to leave at a moment's notice. My husband told his friends he'd be up on Friday. We were all set. Why? Fair play. I mean, you know what? Fair play to the husband for having a woman like this as his wife. You've done well, my friend, is all I'll say. And then on Wednesday, all heck broke loose. Our son got a rash on his hands and feet, and it turns out that someone at daycare had come down with hand, foot and mouth disease. He wasn't showing any other symptoms, so we weren't sure if he actually had it or if it was just a random rash. We decided to see how he was on Thursday. If he had a fever, I was going to get a hotel, because if I came down with it, then I could pass it to the baby, and my husband was going to have to stay home. Our son woke up fever-free on Thursday morning, so we were all set. Then, on Thursday night, my mum went to the ER with stomach pains. Turns out, she was also having a baby. Not really. I wonder how many of you I got with that. Turns out, she was going to need surgery. My husband was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. on Friday, but I asked him to wait until we got an update on my mum. That was a bit silly from me, but let me know in the comments down below. Did I prank ya? When I called her on Friday morning, apparently she was feeling better, so the doctor told her that she might be able to go home and schedule the surgery for a later date. I gave my husband the go-ahead to leave for the bachelor party. Except, then the doctor changed his mind and decided the surgery couldn't wait. My mum spent the weekend in the hospital waiting for a surgeon to be available. She finally was able to have the surgery on Sunday morning. In the meantime, I lined up a few friends just in case I happened to go into labour. My dad was also around, but had his hands full dealing with my mum and the move. So this weekend was stressful and it felt like everything that could go wrong did, but at least the baby stayed put. My husband got to go to 2 of the 3 nights of the bachelor party. My mum's surgery went well and our son never actually got sick. And my husband was a lot more responsive to text than he normally is because of the whole situation with my mum. No, that shouldn't have been the reason. It should have been because of you potentially having a kid. Anyway, I'm just glad that my husband is home and that this weekend is finally over. What have I just read? Please, can some of the comments agree with me here? What is going on? Let's just get straight into them. Somebody said, I nearly got a panic attack reading this. Okay, good. It was extremely irresponsible of your husband to leave once potential hand, foot and mouth disease was knocking about and your mother's surgery was in the picture. He shouldn't have even had to ask you. I mean, that is the thing. He really shouldn't have done. That puts pressure on you to not come across as a female dog in this. This could easily have gone a lot worse. You just lucked out. I was a preemie from my mother stressing out. I've had really bad hand, foot, and mouth disease as an adult. And when I gave birth myself, it went from low risk to life-threatening pretty fast. And 2 hours would definitely have made a big difference. He's a father, and that means he's got to be there for you, his son, and new baby to be. A multi-day bachelor party cannot be a priority. It doesn't matter if you're family and friends, it's his child. I feel like you only got not the jerk because Reddit skews young enough and male enough that they don't quite internalize all the emotional labor that men pass to women and how optional men find putting in the time to be a father. Would they think it's reasonable if, at 1 week postpartum, you decided to leave the baby behind and party up with your friends? After all, there's breast pumps and formula, so other people can theoretically do the newborn parenting. He owes you like all the 4 a.m. feedings at this point to make this up. Somebody else commented, and you're gonna like this one. Can you imagine if she'd gone into birth? OP, it's just me today. Dog. Really? You have someone you can call? Your mum? Well, she's in emergency surgery. Okay, your dad? He's taking care of her. Any friends? Well, they're caring for my son who has hand, foot, and mouth disease. Okay, what is going on? Where's your husband again? Now see, he really wanted 2 nights with his boys. Goodness me. I'm glad it worked out, but I hope this man grows up. Somebody else said, this could be turned into a movie. So much drama with a good ending. Congrats, I'm glad everything turned out okay. Mum okay, son okay, you and baby okay. Husband had 2 nice days. Now, poop is going to hit the fan when the baby comes. You're going to be busier than a one-armed paper hanger. Now, OP did actually leave one final update here. Wow, I really wasn't expecting this to blow up. My husband and I were looking at the weekend with a sense of humour, as in, what else could go wrong? He's a great husband and father and very helpful around the house. I understand that he wanted a last hurrah with the boys before the baby comes, and I thought we did pretty well coming up with a compromise that was as stress-free as possible for everyone involved. Unfortunately, the best laid plans and all that rubbish. We're both just glad that he was able to have a great time with his friends. No one got hand, foot, and mouth disease. My mum's okay, and he didn't miss the baby being born. Okay, I mean, maybe, but like, sorry. As I've already said throughout all of this story, you don't get in the comments down below. Tell me if I'm actually like just siding with the mum too much here. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. I also don't think that any of this stuff really had to happen before the decision should have been made. Like the hand, foot, and mouth disease and your OP's mum going into surgery or whatever. Like, surely you should already have just been like, oh, I'm going to be at home. And even after that, like, surely at that point, when you've got the disease and both of OP's parents are obviously tied up in the surgery, he should have been like, okay, no, you know what? I do want to go to this, but I'll definitely stay at home now. What is going on? Also, why not just make yourself unavailable for that weekend in the first place? 2 weeks before your wife is due is a stupid time to organize a bachelor party. Do it on another day. Like, your wife explicitly said to you, the earlier you do it, the better, because I'm pregnant. It's so dumb. I just don't really get why the people of Reddit, and this is where I do often, and sometimes, not often, often it's harsh, but sometimes I'm a little bit perplexed by Redditors when they just like come to some opinion that I just do not agree with. I guess that's the beauty of the internet. But last hurrah before the baby comes? You already have a baby. Like, I feel like you're past that point now. Unless he gets a last hurrah before every new baby comes. It's stupid. Why do you need a last hurrah as well? Like, you've chosen to have a baby. Shouldn't that just be like the most unbelievable thing ever? And also the fact that you already have a kid, like you're already looking after a kid. Having another one doesn't change the fact that you're already looking after one. I don't get the last hurrah bit. I don't understand. I really, really don't. I just think this guy is an absolute clown. Like, let me know in the comments down below if you agree with me on this. I just think it's like the most easy sort of conclusion to this one ever. He's just a clown. And look, clearly OP is a very, very selfless, forgiving person. But I feel like you're bordering on welcome mat material. That is how much your husband feels like he can just do stuff and get away with it because you're so nice to him. Maybe I'm going too far here. Let me know in the comments down below. My family was uninvited from a trip because my son, who is 14, is autistic. This was originally posted on May the 31st, 2015. 5 years ago, my childhood best friend, I am a 44-year-old man, invited me, my wife, who is 41, and our son on a week-long trip to California with his family and 3 of his college and work friends, a group of guys from 42 to 45, and their families. I'd met them before and we all got on well enough, so I agreed to it. Now, they knew that my son was autistic before they invited us, and were fine with it, apparently. The first year we went, my son had a really hard time adjusting, but got better as time went on. Although he did have a few meltdowns, but everyone acted like it was fine and that they understood, and they continued to invite us on the trip in the next few years. And things usually just went like that. But earlier this week, my friends said that they wanted to discuss the trip, and I too wanted to discuss the trip because of some concerns I had. Mainly one of my friend's teenage daughters, who was extremely rude to my son. So I agreed. But when I got there, things were really awkward. No one really said anything, and finally one of the guys just said that they and their families had decided that it would probably be best if we, my family, didn't go on the trip this year. I was completely blindsided. I of course asked why, and none of them would come right out and say directly, but they slyly said it was because of my son. They said that this year, since it was vacation, they wanted to be able to truly relax, and for the past few years, they haven't been able to. They also said that this year they really wanted some adult time since they haven't had any the last few years. Whenever my wife and I went out, our son would have to come too because nobody would stay with him. And quite frankly, I didn't trust any of the other kids to stay with him, and he had a meltdown once at a restaurant. Their final reason was that some of their kids were uncomfortable. We rent a big house out there and felt unsafe staying in the house because of one instance where my son did get a little out of hand, one time out of the 4 years, so I did understand that part a bit. Like I said, they never came right out and said it was because of my son, but I knew it was, and that really hurt. This trip is the only time my wife and I ever get away, and they knew that. I think it's pretty sad that a group of adults can't see past a few inconveniences and annoyances from a child who can't help it for a few days, but I know it's a little different to me because I deal with it all of the time. Overall, I'm just angry, hurt, and confused, as is my wife, by all of this. They're supposed to be my friends, and I thought they understood everything. I feel like I'm ready to cut ties with all of them and not look back, but my wife thinks that I should tell them all how I truly feel about the situation, so they won't just think it's okay to do that to anyone. I don't really know what I'm asking, whether I'm overreacting, I truly don't think I am, or whether I should just end the friendship now, or talk to them first. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post. Wow. I mean, this is a tough one, isn't it? It's a really tough spot. Before I give my thoughts, let's jump into the top comment that was left on the original post. That is the comment with the most upvotes. Somebody said, "You have every right to feel hurt because we can't control the hands we're dealt. However, I'm inclined to say that your friends do have a valid point. An autistic child is a lot to deal with, and not everyone is able to do it. Your point of view is people should accept him because he can't help it, because he's your child and you're used to it. Imagine it from the other point of view. They see it as a child who can randomly go off at any moment, whether he can help it or not. It doesn't matter if it's caused by a disease or just a hyperactive child. They see the potential meltdowns as uncomfortable and awkward. Pretend it wasn't your child. Pretend one of your friend's children has ADHD. His family wants to go on vacation because they're used to it and have learned to tune down his yelling. Would you want to go out with him constantly yelling and making people uncomfortable? Now, I'm not sure about that as an assessment of ADHD, but let's carry on. Some young children with ADHD definitely do behave like that. Anyway, could your friends have been more straightforward in their approach? Yes. At the end of the day, they did a cost-benefit analysis and figured it was better to have peace of mind for their kids and them, and they decided to cut you. I recommend planning a vacation with your son. There's no reason why you can't have a great time as a family somewhere. Okay, so there we go for the original post, and you see now why I say in the intro that this is a tough one, because I want to remain respectful with everything I'm saying and I'm about to say, but I do agree with this top comment. And that doesn't take away from how tough it is. I mean, I have no idea, but just I can't even begin to imagine how tough it is to be a parent to an autistic child. But I do feel like you can just go on a holiday or a vacation with your own family and that be all right. Now, look, obviously you have enjoyed going away with these guys before and you'd love to keep doing it. And I imagine from your point of view and your perspective, you're thinking that you're getting punished because your son has autism. And how is that fair? Like, you're the one that has to deal with him every day. They're just doing it for a few days on their vacation. Is that really that bad? No, I agree with that. But also, like, you have to think about it from their point of view. As this commenter said, it is their vacation too. And, you know, we don't get a lot of vacation time in this life. At least the majority of us don't. So if they're not happy with how it's going and their children aren't feeling comfortable on their vacation and they don't feel free to do what they want to do, then ultimately they don't owe you guys, you know, an invitation. You don't have to go with them. Like, they're not forced to invite you. It's a shame, but I feel like they've tried for what, 4-5 years now, and they've thought, sorry, we can't keep doing this anymore, which is tough. But can you really blame them for that? Let's be honest, objectively, it seems to me like their vacation will be less sort of incident-full, I suppose, or, you know, just in general a little bit easier if you're not there. We're talking objectively here. So who am I to say you have to include this family just to be nice when actually it's taking away from your vacation? Even if it's taking away from it, you know, like 1 to 2%, it's your vacation. Like, you work all year to be able to do something like this, and you know, I can't blame them, as I said. Anyway, there is an update to this one, which was posted a week after the original, and I'm very interested, as I said, to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So let me know what you're thinking before we get into this update. But here we go. This is the update, and this is the conclusion. After thinking hard about it, I decided that I would talk to my friends about everything that happened. We decided to meet again and talk it out. They said that they understood why I was hurt, but they weren't even planning on budging in any way. There was no hesitation this time, and one of them, the one with the rude daughter, told me straight out that being around my son was way too stressful and risky, and that this year they refused to constantly walk on eggshells and put their kids at risk for my family's sake. Look, we were never the closest, but I still thought we were friendly enough acquaintances to be respectful to one another, but I guess not. And in the moment, we did get into a bit of a heated argument and basically nothing got resolved. But my childhood friend did tell me that he doesn't want this to end our friendship and that maybe next year we could all work something out. But quite frankly, I don't really want to go on a trip with any of them, and I left. My wife, when I got home, was happy that I talked to them, but upset that I even considered trying to come up with a solution to go on a trip where we wouldn't even be wanted, which I understand. As far as my friendship with those guys, I'm not sure where it stands, and if we don't talk in the future, it won't bother me too much since they feel the way they do. I know that a lot of people disagree with me, but if you can't accept my child, then you can't accept me, especially when he's so dependent on me. I am a little disappointed because I thought we were all friends, but maybe it's for the best. Oh, yeah, reading that is very, very tough because on the one hand, as I've already said, like, you have to think about your friends here, or I suppose maybe ex-friends and what they deserve from a vacation, but it doesn't half like feel terrible when you've got OP being here like, look, my son is my son. He is who he is. If you can't accept him for that, then we can't be friends because he needs me so much and relies on me and he is my life. Yeah, it's tough. I feel like maybe just the actual resolution here is to not go on a vacation, a group vacation with other people. Maybe just see them more often in the year, but not during an event which requires a lot of planning and time, and you know, people put a lot of effort into vacations and a lot of money as well, and it is with the whole family. Maybe a vacation is not the best bet, you know, for this group of friends. But I also feel for your childhood friend because he's just like, look, I love you, but it's too tough. We can't do it. We've decided we can't do it. Anyway, let's jump into the comments before I give my final thoughts. Somebody said, everyone in your last post said this is how they probably felt and have a right to feel, almost to the letter. They feel like they have to walk on eggshells. Do you think they should be made to feel like that on their vacation? You feel like they're rejecting your family and you have a right to feel that way, but it seems like you still haven't looked at the other side of the coin. And finally, somebody says, Your friends don't owe you a vacation. You're demonizing them as if they don't like you or your kid, and you feel that they should accept your son without reservations because his misbehavior is part of his disability. Vacations are not supposed to be stressful. Your son adds stress to their vacation. They're in no way obligated to deal with that. You are, because he is your kid. And guess what? They tried for 4 years to accept the situation and see it from your end. What have you tried? Goodness me, a scathing comment there, but maybe it's based in reality. Like, I'm not sure I'd personally want to go to the lengths of that comment. It does seem a little bit harsh. But again, is any of it necessarily wrong? I kind of concur with the final point. What have you tried? Because they have sacrificed quite a lot, I think. And this sounds terrible saying it, because obviously you've sacrificed like your life to have this kid, but he is your kid, and you do sort of sign up for that when you have a child. What have you tried is a good question. I mean, maybe you could do more stuff on your own when you're on the vacation, or let the other adults do stuff. Again, like, even saying that, it's not what you want to do, is it? I think I'm actually happy with what I said earlier, that you guys should continue being friends, but just think to yourself that a group vacation like this just isn't the way forward, because it just can't work. And just be content with that, I think. It's a shame, once again, but that's all I can say on that. Now, somebody else in the comments down below picked out OP saying this, that some of their kids felt unsafe staying in the house because of one instance where my son did get a little out of hand, which was one time out of the 4 years. So I did understand that part a bit. And they said, you've been a little bit scant on the details there, OP. The other kids feel unsafe. Of course, their kids want to protect them, the same as OP wants to protect his son. And I think that is the main point. Like, you know, it's very tough. It's a very, very tough spot once again. But ultimately, if people are feeling unsafe because of your son, then again, you can't blame them for saying, we don't want your son there. And it's horrible, but I think it's just fair. It's just not meant to be. Simple as that. I think everyone should just say, look, this is sad that we can't do this, but it's for the benefit of everyone to not do this. Let's just do other things instead. Racist customer demanded we fire and replace our employees with white American employees, even though we are an immigrant-owned business. I mean, I've got to just say this off the bat. It doesn't matter if you're an immigrant-owned business or not. Demanding that you fire and replace employees with white American employees is crazy. Anyway, let's get into the story. Okay, I am a 28-year-old woman, and I live here in Colorado. But my family and I emigrated here to the States from the former Yugoslavia, with my mother being Serbian and my dad being Montenegrin. My dad owns his own renovation business, which he was inspired to set up after watching the TV show Home Improvements. And even though I have my own full-time job, I do casual work for my dad's business, mainly doing office admin and payroll stuff. My dad has 2 employees, both of whom are Filipino. And one day, we had a customer who booked a job, and my dad sent his 2 employees to go to the customer's house, only for the customer to turn them away, telling them to leave. My dad's worker, who I will call Miguel, texted me to say that the client told them to leave. So I just assumed that they changed their mind and wanted to cancel the job. However, literally a few minutes after the text from Miguel, I received a call from the customer, who I will call Ken, who angrily complained about having 2 Chinese employees come over to his place, complained about them stealing jobs from white men, and actually demanded that we fire them, replace them with white employees, and send over an employee who is white and not an immigrant. I pretty much knew how this conversation was going to play out, but I decided to just roll with it and tell him that those 2 Asian men were our only employees and that our business is an immigrant-owned business, as my dad and I are both immigrants from Montenegro. Ken then demanded that we at least send over an employee who is white, and I told him it makes no difference if the employee is white or not, as the fact that my family and I are European makes us not really different to immigrants from the Philippines, China, Mexico, wherever. He then accused us of stealing jobs, saying things along the lines of, "This is Trump's America now, and that you don't deserve the business." And after letting him rant, I just told him to find someone else to do the job, and hung up. Well, there we go, guys. Some story to start this episode. Absolutely ridiculous. I just hope for your sake as a company that you guys had some form of non-refundable deposit in place, because You've had to send workers out there for nothing. So I hope at least you had some money or some compensation for their time. But let's just talk about the guy for a second. I just don't really understand like what he's even saying. Is he saying that because you employ immigrants, or the fact that you yourself are an immigrant, that you don't deserve the business that you've built for yourself, which obviously wouldn't exist without everything that you've done? How is this stealing jobs? I don't get it. Like, you've just done well yourself. It's not stealing jobs at all, is it? And even if it was, if you're doing the job better than some fat, lazy white guy, then power to you. Keep doing your stuff. You know what would genuinely be amazing to see in America or just any country in the world, right? Well, the Western world, most likely. What would happen if all non-white people just said for a few days or a week, I'm not going to work today, and let's just see what happens? Like, genuinely. So every immigrant, or I guess non-American, let's say for this example, every immigrant, every non-white person just said, you know what? I'm not working today. I think that the entire country would just like immediately implode, right? I mean, what would happen? Nothing would work. The whole country would just blow up. Genuinely, I mean, think about it. What, like, get in the comments down below. What do you think would happen? I think it would just be absolute anarchy and probably be so funny to watch from someone in the UK. When my mailbox moving became political. So, when we bought the house and moved in 3 years ago, we accepted the location of the mailbox. It's on the other side of our driveway and across some uneven ground, about 50 yards away from the door. This wasn't a problem back then, but since that point, we've had a series of bad luck. My wife needed a new knee, I sprained an ankle, and while it's healed enough to walk on and go back to work, anyone who's had one knows that it can take a while before it's back to 100%. So, it was decided that the mailbox ought to be moved to the end of our path to the street. Straight ahead, on a flat and smooth surface, only about 30 feet away. We asked the post office what we needed to do to move a mailbox. We were told that all we needed to do was let the driver know that it was being moved and to just move it, making sure that it's numbered to match the house so there's no confusion. We went to the store to buy a new one since the old one was getting a little ratty from getting hit a couple of times, and I installed it this weekend. Which was, to our amusement, the best time to install it, since we actually caught the driver and were able to tell her that here was the new mailbox and that the other was going away. Great. Situation handled. Installation goes well, and now we're on to part 2, the removal of the other mailbox. Here's where my moving the mailbox got political. The old mailbox was on the same post as my neighbour across the street and one house over, so we shared it. During this past election, I posted no signs supporting either of the candidates. My neighbour John, not his real name, had half a dozen signs though, flags and a banner as well in his yard in support of a certain candidate. John came over as I was removing the old box and complained that the only reason I was doing this was that I didn't support said candidate, and this was my petty ass reason, and that I just didn't want to be associated with him. In truth, I didn't want to be associated with him. Largely before we knew he was a supporter, he wasn't a very pleasant person. Walking my dog, he'd yell at me to keep that goddamn mutt off my yard, even though I was on my side of the street. He'd also call animal control on me about my chickens running loose across his yard, when in reality it was his neighbour to his right that had the chickens. I don't have any, although I did buy a used chicken coop since it's also a very nice unit for keeping my wife's Angora rabbits in. So I can see the confusion. We used to wave to him like we'd do for any of our neighbours we'd see outside, and he never waved back, typically just ignoring us and making a point to look at something, anything else other than us. Unless we had the dog, then he'd watch us like a hawk to make sure we didn't come near his lawn. Honestly, we disliked him long before we knew he was a supporter. I explained the medical condition, the walk through uneven ground that I stated above, but that wasn't enough for him. He threatened to call the HOA. We don't have an HOA, we have a neighbourhood association that only concerns itself with collecting donations for snow removal and mosquito spraying. I just finished removing the mailbox and went back inside, and I vowed to ignore him from here on out. Well, that is the end of the second story, and all I can think is, are we sure that these two people in the first story and the second story aren't the same? I mean, I think it might be right. This guy is, well, let's be honest, the guy in the first story was clearly a Trump supporter, as well as this guy as well. So, I mean, the top comment here says, your neighbor is mentally ill. I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, mentally, there's a lot going on there, that is for sure. And once again, probably a racist. I mean, to be fair, that's a bit harsh. We don't have any evidence to suggest he's racist, but I would just love if John was the same person as in the first story. It would just make me laugh. Brother throws fit because he didn't get a job interview. So this happened a couple of years ago, but no matter what, I can't get over how entitled my brother acted. For context, my brother, who was at the time about 23 years old, and my older sister, who was 28, both applied to one of the only jobs hiring near where they lived. The job was for a cashier position, which my sister had several years of experience in customer service, while my brother only worked 1 year at a factory in his life and quit because he didn't get a raise, claiming it was unfair when staff who worked there for 5+ years got raises. But anyways, one day we were out shopping when my sister got a call from the job they both applied for. They wanted her in for an interview. When hearing that, my brother basically threw a fit. He told my sister it was unfair you got an interview and I didn't when I put in an application a week before you did, and I even called to check up on it. I reminded him that our sister has experience while he doesn't. He then repeated, but I put in an application first. I should be first. Then I told him that's not how interviews work. They wait for the ones with experience so they don't have to do much training. He then got even more upset and claimed that the store is sexist and she's only getting hired because she's a female, which honestly made me so irritated. He was acting like a child, and our dad tried backing him up, telling my sister to put in a good word for your brother. My sister told our dad there's no way she can do that because even if she gets hired, it would be wrong to immediately convince them to hire our brother. While this conversation was going on, my brother kept on going on about how the owner is male, so he must be sexist and only want females, since currently the only staff there are women. So in order to get in, he needed our sister to tell them to hire him too during her interview. I noticed my sister getting upset throughout all of this. At first, she was so excited to get the interview and was hoping that everyone would be happy for her. But instead, no, they acted like she was wrong for getting the interview instead of our brother. I told my dad and brother that that was enough and that she got the interview because she has several years of experience under her belt, while our brother had none, and it had nothing to do with her gender, and that no, she wasn't going to mention our brother during her interview or after getting hired, because if they didn't contact him, clearly he didn't cut it, and just stop. After that, everyone went silent. I mean, this is absolutely crazy because what your brother, OP, is asking your sister to do, and for some reason your dad is supporting him on this, is to potentially sacrifice her own job, her own career, if she does, get this job. By the way, she's only got an interview so far, for the sake of her brother. Like, imagine you went into a job interview and your sibling had said to you, yeah, during your interview, would you mind just letting them know that I have also applied for the job and I also want it? Firstly, are there even 2 jobs available, or are they just hiring one person? Because imagine you were competing for the same job and your brother was like, no, just tell them about me in your interview. I want to get it. And secondly, you're just completely scuppering your own chances if you just say, yeah, this is why I deserve the job. But also, have you seen my brother's CV? He could also be great. And also, even if you do get the job and you're in your first week or whatever, like your brother's asking, imagine you're in a new job and you say, this is great, guys. Really happy to be here. I really feel settled now, to the extent that I can now say, would you consider hiring my brother after just a few days of working at an institution? I mean, that would be downright ridiculous. Your brother is clearly very entitled. I think your dad is as well. Maybe that's where he gets it from. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if your brother hasn't got an interview, he's not qualified enough and he doesn't deserve one. And that's on him. Her face went red in anger. I thought I'd share a story from my time as a worker at a very popular theme park in Florida. I've mentioned in other stories I've shared that I worked at an attraction. One day, I was fast past line greeter, and it was in the middle of peak season. We were ridiculously crowded with wait times for standby being 2 hours, single rider around 50 minutes, and fast pass over an hour. We were instructed to allow people in on the time stamped on their fast pass to help thin the line. Sometimes when it wasn't as busy, we'd allow people to enter 5 minutes earlier than their ride reservation. A woman wearing white shorts, a fanny pack, and a white sun visor came walking up happily with her group and showed me her fast pass. I stopped her because it was 10 minutes early. I politely explained she'd have to wait to enter on the time stamps on the fast pass ticket. "Oh, come on. Really? It's just a few minutes early," she said. "I apologise, Mum. Unfortunately, we're very busy, so you're going to have to wait for the time on your fast pass." "That's ridiculous. Everyone else let us in a few minutes early." She then tries to walk past me, but that's not happening. I blocked her by stepping in her way. I smile and I ask her to step to the side. "Ugh," she says. I continue to let people in according to the times on their passes as the woman glares angry daggers at me. A man next to her tells her to just wait. It's not that serious, but she is fuming. Literally 3 minutes go by and she storms back up and shoves the pass in my face. "Good enough now. Can I go in now?" At this point, I'm trying to remain magical. "Mom, you still have 7 minutes until you can enter. Please step to the side." "You're joking. 7 minutes? You're not seriously going to make me wait for 7 minutes? "Yes, I am. Please step to the side." Another 2 minutes go by as a line of people come in. I check everyone's time, not looking at faces so much, but hands and tickets when I see the same ticket. I look up and it's the same woman again. She still had 5 minutes to wait. Now I'm irritated and she's irritated. I just stare at her for a few seconds quietly before doing a 2-finger point back to the side where her group and others were waiting patiently. She stormed back off as my co-worker Kate walked up with my brake slip. The woman instantly got a grin on her face when she saw I was about to leave. Her grin, though, annoyed me so much, and my petty box was immediately switched to on. So I gave Kate a brief version of events, and I instructed her to make sure she waited until the exact time printed on the frickin' fast pass ticket. She laughed a bit and said, "Okay." I walk away, but only a few feet when she sauntered over, arrogantly grinning to Kate, and shows her the ticket. "Sorry, but you're gonna have to wait until the time printed on the fast pass, Mom," Kate says. The woman, with her face turning incredibly red in anger, says, "Did she tell you to do that?" Well, I have to work with her. I'm just standing pettily a few feet away, saying nothing. I feel like I talk about customer service jobs quite a lot in my episodes, because a lot of the stories that we see, especially with entitled people, are like just terrible customers. I feel like Disneyland or Disney World or whatever it's called, wherever you are in the US or in France or whatever, must be one of the toughest jobs when you get like an entitled person like this. And as OP said, like you're trying to maintain the magic and make this place so beautiful and special for children. I remember when I went there, and this is in France. I've never been to Disneyland or Disney World in America, but Disneyland Paris, and you know, the people that work there must be amazing. I don't really remember any of them in particular, but I just felt like it was such a special environment and like otherworldly and just almost heavenly. And obviously that is down to the people working there as much as it is everything else, because imagine if the people working there weren't like in that sort of mindset or so positive or like dreamy, it just wouldn't work, right? So to have people like this Karen of a woman potentially like jeopardizing that and ruining that for kids like myself, because I don't know how you, OP, have kept your cool as well as this. Like, fair play to you for doing that. You know, imagine me as a kid. I'm in the queue behind this Karen and I see her having a go at you, and then you're just like, I can't be bothered with this sort of person anymore, and you flip or you lose your head a little bit. That would just ruin the entire experience for me as a kid. So fair play to you for maintaining your cool. The point being, I feel like this would be one of the worst sort of customer service roles there is at an extreme, because you have to stay so professional and so positive. Maybe that's the case in a lot of customer service roles, but I feel like at Disney World, that's like the epitome of you've got to stay in character. You've got to stay positive because who knows who's watching, and yeah, it's an amazing experience for kids like myself. But fair play to you. Well done for doing your job. But yeah, I don't think I'd be able to manage with people like this. Am I the jerk for divorcing my husband and leaving him with the kid after finding out I'm not biologically the mum? The original post for this one came on August the 5th, 2024. I can't believe my life has come to this. All I ever do is go out of my way to help others. But on the few occasions I need help, nobody ever comes through for me. I am a 36-year-old woman, and I've been with my husband, who is 35, for almost 10 years. We've been married for 7. We had what I thought was my child by surrogate over 2 years ago, because after 4 years of trying to conceive with no success, despite medical intervention, it turns out I am unable to carry a child to term. I'd always wanted to be a mum. Devastated is an understatement regarding how I felt when I found out I have a medical condition that would make it nearly impossible to carry a baby to term. It was even more upsetting when I had to get a major surgery to remove uterine growths with the hope to increase fertility, and complications during surgery warranted a partial hysterectomy involving removal of my uterus. I still had my ovaries, so we started looking into the cost of a surrogate. It's really expensive. My close friend since college, who'd already had 2 kids of her own, offered to serve as the surrogate for us to cut down on costs. After 2 disappointing IVF sessions that didn't result in pregnancy, she became pregnant on the 3rd try and carried a boy to term for us. I was so happy and busy after the birth, between being a mum and returning to work after a 4-week paternal leave, so I didn't notice any warning signs. I should have noticed the red flags and warning signs early on, but I didn't. I was just so exhausted from working so much at my stressful job, and on top of that 2 part-time jobs to cover most of the bills, and the anticipated medical and legal costs associated with this friend becoming our surrogate. I was the primary breadwinner. Now, my friend and my husband started talking more. I'd actually sometimes come home from my weekend job to find her already hanging out at our house when my husband was there. I chalked it up as innocuous. It's good for her to know my husband better, since she was in the process of hopefully carrying our child for us. I was grateful to have someone helping us have a child. I also then thought it weird that our son has brown eyes when both of us have blue. Then I found out that while this is uncommon, it is possible sometimes due to many genes controlling eye colour. Recently, it all came to a head when I took our son to a doctor's appointment and they did metabolic panel and blood tests, which showed that he had a blood type that is not biologically possible to have with me as his mother. He's B+, I'm A+, my husband is O+. Immediately, I started worrying it was the fertility clinic's fault and that they'd messed up and implanted a wrong embryo. I started lining up lawyer consultations to possibly sue the clinic, and I looked into having a DNA parentage test done. The test results showed that I'm not the mother, but my husband still is the father. I was heartbroken and angrier than ever. I talked to lawyers about medical malpractice in the fertility clinic we'd used. Then my husband confessed that he'd slept with my friend, our surrogate, on a few different occasions during our struggle to have her get pregnant with our embryos. This means what I thought was our son conceived by IVF and carried with a surrogate isn't my son at all, and he was in fact conceived the old-fashioned way, which I can't even do. Livid and absolutely broken at the same time doesn't even begin to describe how I feel. I've been breaking down into crying spells over and over again about this. He claims he didn't ever think pregnancy could result because he pulled out, and he'd always assumed that he was the reason for our earlier struggles to conceive, both before my hysterectomy and during the IVF insemination process with this friend. I felt an immediate triple betrayal from what was supposed to be my husband, my friend, and now knowing my child isn't even really mine. I had such white-hot rage and delirium, I immediately left home and stayed at a hotel for almost a week before asking my parents to let me stay at home for a while. I admit I left our son with him. I'm now filing divorce because he cheated and betrayed me in the worst possible way. I've also cut off my friendship with my friend, the surrogate, and I feel afraid to trust anyone else now. I've seen a divorce lawyer to see about giving up my legal rights to this kid, so I don't have to face such betrayal or owe child support. My husband and friend, surrogate, admit they were wrong and keep apologizing, but also called me immature and heartless to just give up on my son like that. My parents also say I can't just give up on a kid that I went through so many legal and medical hoops to have. When I told them I refused to stay in a cheating marriage and I'd rather adopt someday with a better, more trustworthy partner, they also told me that I was wrong and that maintaining my parental rights isn't much different than if I adopted outright. They said it isn't blood that makes a family. They're all about me divorcing my cheater husband, but they keep telling me I'm making a mistake giving up my parental rights. Some of my other friends agree with what I'm doing. A few admitted they weren't big enough to swallow pride and care for an affair baby, or to see daily reminders of my friend/surrogate's betrayal every time I look at her son. I just want a clean break and a fresh start. I'm also looking at relocating several states away. So, am I the jerk for giving up my parental rights in the divorce because a kid I paid a lot of money to have born by surrogacy isn't biologically mine at all, but is actually the surrogate's? Okay, wow, what a story. First of all, let's jump into some comments before I give my thoughts and we get into the update for this one. Somebody said, "No, you are of course not the jerk. You've suffered a terrible betrayal. Only you can say what's best for you." Personally, I wouldn't be able to look at the child without being hit with the betrayal again and again. Your parents and friends don't have to actually deal with that situation, so they don't get a vote. Your soon-to-be ex is a real piece of work. You're immature? I'd want to throw up if I was in the same room with him. Please get some therapy to work through this. Don't let these two jerks hold you back from living your best life. Completely agree with all of that, by the way. The immature comment is just ridiculous. Like, when you know you're in the complete wrong and then you have a go at the person that you've done this to by calling them immature, it's insane. Anyway, OP replied to this saying, he feels like biological maternity shouldn't matter that much when it means that I am finally fulfilling my dream of becoming a mother. He says that if I adopt someday, I'm still going to have to raise a child that isn't biologically mine. How does that make any sense? There's a difference. On the one hand, when you adopt a child, you know it's not yours. But when you have a child through a surrogacy, like, you don't also think it's not yours. It's your genes. It's completely different. I know it's not in your belly, but come on, man. Anyway, let's carry on. OP says, he has reminded me about what a depressive wreck I was during the infertility, the aftermath of my partial hysterectomy, and how I put him through the ringer because I was obsessed with wanting to have a child. He claims that I pushed him away with my baby obsession and he couldn't deal with me anymore, and that's why he started straying the way he did. He also says that I can't just turn my back on a child when I legally signed all the paperwork, which is similar to adoption paperwork, since the state doesn't readily recognize a child born to a surrogate to be the couple's child, since they base it on the person who gave birth to the child as being the legal mother until paperwork is signed that transfers the rights over. He also claimed that I'm going to have a difficult battle ahead of me trying to reverse that. What a nice person your soon-to-be ex is. Jesus. Now, somebody said that OP should ask her husband and the surrogate to actually reimburse her for the cost of IVF. OP replied to this saying, I tried and failed. The doctor and clinic I complained to said the IVF costs were associated with the formation and storage of embryos and the procedures associated with the insemination, not the outcome. OP then also responded to a question about her ovaries or eggs being intact or not. She said, obviously I have eggs if my ovaries are intact, and they extracted eggs to form the embryos prior to inseminating. There's still eggs remaining there. Well, I suppose that is good news. I don't know if OP will be able to go through this process again with another surrogate after this rubbish. I mean, think of the trauma, but who knows, at least the option is there. OP then explained fully in the comments the process of the fertility clinic being involved. The fertility clinic was just involved in the egg extraction, embryo formation, and storage of eggs and embryos. Another medical practice utilized the in vitro fertilization methods with the person I thought would be our surrogate. He didn't pick the surrogate for us. It was a personal friend who agreed to do this out of the supposed kindness of her heart, since she already had 2 prior children and knew that she could carry to term easily and didn't mind being pregnant. Had we gone through a professional surrogacy practice, there would have been other steps involved, and they would have found a few options for surrogates for us, but the costs were way too high, which is why we skipped some steps and a lot of money by going through a friend that we thought we could trust. Now, I feel like I can trust no one. I don't even feel like I could try surrogacy again in the future because my trust in that is broken. Well, there we go. I suppose that is the answer to my question, which is a real shame. Somebody else commented, you're obviously not the jerk. One of the things that gets me though is that you were working extra jobs to pay for the surrogacy, which I'm assuming included her medical bills and financially supporting her. I'd speak to a solicitor about suing her for your money back. She knew that if she was having sex, there was always a chance that the child was biologically hers. OP said most of the cost was for the egg retrieval, embryo formation and storage, and especially the IVF procedures, which weren't eligible for insurance cover through her health insurance. Yeah, I see. I mean, tough spot, but surely there is something you could do there. Something legal you could do there. Like, you can sue for something. Surely, like damages of any sort. There must be rights or, like things that you can't do as a surrogate mother. I mean, there has to be, otherwise it would just be ridiculous, right? And I know this wasn't a professional surrogacy, but surely you can't have sex during surrogacy or like supposed surrogacy with one of the people you're meant to be like doing the work or doing the job for. I don't know any of the rules clearly, but if you do, I suppose they also differ wherever you are in the world, but let me know in the comments down below what the laws are where you are. OP actually then answered finally a couple of questions about the surrogate. Firstly, her family, saying she doesn't have a husband. She had 2 kids with a long-term boyfriend, but they split 5 years or so ago. She's not married. She was with her ex for a long time and had 2 kids with him, but they didn't marry and then they broke up. Somebody asked, finally, did the surrogate sign legal papers regarding the parental rights? The only paperwork that was legally drafted was for her transferring over the parental rights to us, much like an adoption in the event that there is already a mutual off-the-books agreement to adopt from someone already personally known. We were trying to do it as cheaply as possible because we don't make much money, and the cost that couldn't be avoided was sky high, enough to the point I took out loans from the bank and then picked up those 2 part-time jobs on the side to pay towards these loans. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post and some comments. Now, as I said in the intro, there is an update to this one, which comes 5 months after the conclusion of that. However, I do just want to say one thing, and I feel like most things have been cleared up by the comments, and I do agree with the majority of what was said there. The one thing that I just don't think has been talked about enough is the level of betrayal. Like, it's actually insane from so many people. Well, I say so many people, it's only actually your husband and the surrogate in quotes. But like, it's actually crazy. I mean, the fact they've gaslit you as well is just the cherry on top. But that's the one thing the comments aren't really saying. It's just, yeah, you've suffered a lot of betrayal, but like, think about the actual trauma. This would have gone on for your entire life, right, if you hadn't found out. I don't think that you would have ever been told by your husband or by the surrogate what actually happened. So there is a decent chance that you could have gone your entire life with having a son that you obviously thought was your son that actually wasn't ever related to you. And I know we see these things sometimes on, like, we have Jeremy Kyle, well, not anymore, it was cancelled in the UK, but like Jerry Springer in the US. It just is insane, and I don't actually think that sometimes I realize how common stuff like this is, or actually how easily it can come about, because all that has happened here is just 2 people have well, one person has cheated, but all you need is for these 2 people to hold this truth for their lives, which, I don't know, they probably could easily do so. I mean, they did it for a while anyway, and then you find yourself living an entire life where you think you're a mum, but you're actually not. You know when you see on these shows like, oh, this woman finds out after 25 years that you are not the mother or you are not the father. I'm always a bit like, okay, that's just ridiculous. But this is not ridiculous. I can see how this would happen, 100%. Very tough. But as I said, let's get into the update that came 5 months later, which was actually left in the comments of the original post. It wasn't a separate update. So this was January the 4th, 2025. And OP said, I'm low on time right now. I'll be posting a separate update post later. Now, at the time of recording, that hasn't happened, which probably means that, yeah, very, very stressed. No time at all. But they still say, I'm not staying and I'm not caring for him anymore. I wasn't even offered a choice in the matter at all, which is why I've kept telling myself I shouldn't want to compare myself to men in a similar type of parentage situation, and I've kept myself aloof towards the boy I thought was mine. I've no legal rights anymore, no matter what, because she fought to get her son back. I'm actually a lot more upset about losing this child than I presented in my post, and I'm realizing more and more with each passing day, the choice wasn't mine and I lost. Oh my gosh, I see. I posted that I wouldn't want to be the sucker raising someone else's kid as more of a cope than anything. She got to have her kid. He left me and I'm stuck with nothing. What the heck? And that is all for the post. I didn't really fully grasp that when I started reading that, but wow. So the surrogate actually fought back. Well, not the surrogate, I suppose. The actual biological mum fought back and said, no, this is my kid. I am the mum, and I'm going to be the mum. Jesus. Okay. OP did add a little bit more context in the comments, explaining about being the legal guardian in the question after the maternal test confirmed her not to be the biological mother. She said, and yes, that is exactly what I've been going through all these months. I have little to no rights. I'm stuck coping with major loss. I suppose the question was asking, like, what rights do you have as a legal guardian if you're actually not involved with the kid at all, like biologically, right? My best chance at still being this boy's guardian is to stay with that awful scrub of a guy, hope he lets me stay, and agreeing to let that slaw of a friend, I've never heard slaw before, but that is a wonderful word. I presume it's a combination of two derogatory words, but I might use that myself, have 50-50, and be the chump who still pays most of the bills for that unmotivated scrub SOB in the meantime, while he continues to cheat. It also came out that she wasn't his only affair either. He's been cheating all along for most of the time that we'd been trying, without success of getting pregnant. Oh my gosh. So for anyone who acts like I'm selfish or I make their blood boil, they can go F themselves. They don't know me like that, and I don't have any real choice in the matter. Holy heck is all I can say. Just insane. Just absolutely insane. Like, wow, what a story. I'm absolutely shocked at that outcome. I didn't actually talk at all in my comments after the first post about the main point of the update, as in, how would you feel and how is OP dealing with the fact that, yeah, it's not her kid anymore, but like her parents were saying, do you have to be blood related for it to actually be your child? Like, you know, if you adopt a kid, then they're still your child, right? Does the biology of it really matter that much at all? OP said at first that it did matter. Suppose a few months later she realized that it doesn't matter, or at least doesn't matter as much. But you know, after 2 years of raising a kid, to then just have them taken away like that, even though they're not yours, is yeah, clearly more impactful, I suppose, than OP expected. But Jesus, I mean, somehow the surrogate, in quotes once again, and your ex, or soon to be ex, I suppose, I guess he left you said in the update, are even worse than I first thought from reading the original post. Wow, that was a very short update, but one of the most impactful and just like destroying that I've read. I'm actually slightly lost for words. One of my boyfriends, who is 21, best friends, who is 22, family's house burned down in the California wildfire. His family is him, his pregnant wife, and his toddler, and they are now coming to live with us in our small apartment. I did not agree to this, and I, a 21-year-old woman, am feeling extremely anxious and panicked. This was originally posted on November the 11th, 2018. First, I just want to preface this by saying that I am fully willing to support their family through tangible means, like buying them food, supplies, furniture, etc. I just don't think our apartment is a viable option. My boyfriend and I live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in a very expensive area. Rent is around $3,000 per month, and we're both stressed out college students. This guy has been best friends with my boyfriend since high school, and they regularly keep in touch and drive to see each other. My boyfriend and I live in NorCal, while they live more south. The friend has not been in a good financial situation for the last 2 years. He dropped out of community college after he got a girl pregnant, and they ended up getting married after she gave birth. She's now 7 months pregnant with their second child. My boyfriend and I usually go down to visit them together, and we always pay for meals, and I always try to buy a couple of toys for their 2-year-old. We have been in contact with them since last night. They were able to safely evacuate and bring some essentials, including their car, but their house has burned down. My heart aches for their family, and I really want to help them by transferring money or even calling some of my friends who live in SoCal to see if they are willing to take them in. But during a FaceTime call this morning, my boyfriend immediately, without any hesitation or asking me, offered up our small apartment to them. They were very, very thankful, and at first said that it would be too much for us, but my boyfriend insisted, and they graciously accepted in the end. I was in the background, fairly silent the entire time. After my boyfriend hung up, I asked him why he just extended the offer without even asking me, and he acted shocked and said that he thought that I would 100% support his decision. I told him that I would have in any other living situation, but we're two poor college students living in a small apartment in an expensive area, and it's definitely going to be more than difficult to accommodate his friend, his pregnant wife, and toddler. My boyfriend said that I was being a bit selfish and that they just lost their house, and that I should be more understanding and sympathetic. Yeah, to be honest, I kind of agree with your boyfriend at this point in the story. I'm sure things are going to get a little bit more difficult as we go on though. OP continues, don't get me wrong, I agree that I'm being selfish, but I'm also being reasonable and trying to think rationally. I may be a bit biased since I'm in the middle of preparing for the MCAT, which I'm taking in January, and I really need to do well on it. And dear God, it is not an easy test. For those of you that may not know, I didn't know this myself, the MCAT is the Medical College Admission Test. Okay. Wow, sounds tough. My boyfriend and I are both in very stressful majors that require a load of work and studying, and on top of that, he and I both work part-time. I feel like I'm already so stressed out right now with school, work, and everything. I look forward to quiet time in our apartment that we get to spend. I digress, but I can't help but think of how this changes everything. Of course, this is probably temporary, even though my boyfriend said they could stay as long as they need to, but right now is really not the time. My boyfriend and I argued over this for an hour, and I ended up just heading out for the day. My boyfriend is sticking to his plan, and he texted me saying that he's sorry and that he knows it will be hard, but to remember we're doing a good thing and supporting our friends in a time of crisis. I couldn't help but think that it was really his friend and not ours at all, but I might just be being bitter. They are planning to drive up tomorrow morning. I'm just so worried, stressed, and my anxiety is through the roof. I came home around 2 hours ago and noticed that my boyfriend has already set up a mattress in our second bedroom, which is our office/work area, and set up the couch. I burst into tears and I almost had a panic attack. I just don't know how to deal with toddlers, and I also don't know how to support and take care of a pregnant woman. My boyfriend comforted me, but I can't help but feel a bit resentful right now. He agreed to this without asking me, and I can't fight back now. I seem like such a horrible person. I'm still crying in our room as I'm typing this, and my boyfriend went out to stock up on groceries. God, I don't know what to do, and I feel so panicky. What can I do at this point, Reddit? I'm at a complete loss. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the original post, and I've got to say, when I first read the title and even like a few paragraphs here, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, yes, you're going through a lot, OP, and I understand that, and you've got your exams and you're struggling just in life generally. Well, not struggling, but you're under a lot of stress. But I mean, these people have had their house burned down, and there are levels to this. However, the more and more that I read, the more I'm thinking this probably just wasn't a good fit, and surely there's someone else out there that could take these people in that, has more space, has more time, has more resources. I mean, maybe there isn't, but you would think that there is. And if there isn't, then fair enough, and fair play to your boyfriend for doing this. But the way he's gone about it, not asking you at all, that can't be a good thing. Like, his generosity and his selflessness is unbelievable, and I wish I was as selfless as this guy seems to be. Fair play to him, but you could argue it's gone too far, and if it's going to massively impact your guys' lives in a terribly detrimental way, I'm not sure if it's necessarily worth it. And yeah, not consulting your girlfriend is pretty crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, having anyone move in with you, like if you're in a small apartment, whatever, is going to be tough and you're going to have to make sacrifices, but I say that with the context of the fact that their house has just burned down. But it does seem like in this circumstance, it's not worth it. I don't know. It's close. Let me know in the comments down below what you are thinking right now. Obviously, there is an update to come in this one. I'm just thinking, like, if it's causing you to have panic attacks in your room and just be crying and feel so much resent and, like, yeah, just hatred, I suppose, that's not worth it. Now, one thing that is really interesting that I have to include here, and OP included this in a comment down below in the original post, is this. To be very honest, I'm not the biggest fan of their family. From what I could tell from visiting them with my boyfriend, they do not have their stuff together. While we visited them around 3 months ago, the wife regularly went out and partied, while pregnant, and their toddler is extremely badly behaved. While I was there last time, I had to help change the toddler's diaper while the wife was out partying and my boyfriend and his friend were playing video games. Okay, so maybe that's the context we needed a little bit more of, like on top of all the fact that you don't have the resources to deal with them, you also just don't like them. And yeah, it's hard to sort of welcome someone into your home despite the circumstances when you've seen this, I suppose. But I'm not sure, like socially and sort of like ethically, morally, where do you guys stand on this one? Should you let someone into your home when they've gone through such hardship and their home is burned down? Or if it's going to have such a negative impact on you, then is it worth it? I don't know, it's a tough one. Let's jump into some comments and see what the people of Reddit are saying. So first of all, somebody said, A, does he know the significance of the MCAT? Your feelings are so valid, OP. I can't even imagine being put in this position. My boyfriend just took the MCAT and he wouldn't see me sometimes for long periods of time because he needed to stay in the zone. B, there should be no obligation on you to help out whatsoever. This needs to be temporary. For the good of your future, your relationship, and your mental health. This kind of decision was not his to make on his own. You both live there. Now, I agree with like the majority of that statement, that paragraph. I don't agree with there should be no obligation on you to help out whatsoever. Because if everyone thought that and everyone acted like that, then these people would be homeless. Like somebody has to step up here. And I know like no one's going to want to, and maybe they don't have any family that can help, but somebody is going to have to be selfless and do it. Like, I don't think it's fair to say that there's no obligation on you to help out. I mean, yes, there isn't, but someone has to. C, is this even allowed per your lease? I'm in MA, but my lease has a clause prohibiting visitors for over 1 week, I believe. Maybe you can use this to your advantage in a subtle way to hopefully avoid another argument. Again, I'm not sure if I agree with that, like their home is burned down. I'm saying this all with looking at like the generosity of people in the most recent fires that just obviously were completely devastating. People lost their lives and their livelihoods and were being welcomed in at times by strangers and given stuff by strangers, and yeah, like living with people that maybe they didn't know too well, friends 100%, that were having to sort of like change their lives to welcome in people that had had their lives completely destroyed. Like, you do have to make sacrifices at times like this. And if this happened to one of my good friends, I would like to think that I would make those sacrifices as well. I don't think it's as easy as saying, oh, well, I'm doing an exam and we don't have the space or the money for you. Like, you I don't know. You got to sacrifice these things when someone's house is burned down. D, if they stay longer than a week, you should consider putting yourself first and moving out. The MCAT needs devotion and routine. And if you value med school acceptances more than or equal to your current relationship, go for it. This is important stuff. And E, spend as little time at your place as possible. Find small ways to help out that don't take a lot of time or energy to avoid arguments and help keep the peace. Do those small things and then leave your place for the day. Move some stuff to a friend's place so you have a backup plan if you've had a super stressful day and just need a quiet place to crash. Yeah, that's all pretty good advice, to be fair. It makes sense. It really does. And I'm in two minds. I get it. Like, from a personal point of view, OP is like, what on earth is going on? I cannot deal with this. And I know a lot of you in the comments are probably saying that as well. I just think someone's home has burned down. You're going to have to make sacrifices for them. OP replied to this saying, he knows the significance of the MCAT, yet he still chose to make this rash decision without so much as to even consult me about it. Yeah, I looked up our lease this morning and it says no visitors for over 1 week too. I think that's usually the norm. I would definitely be pulling that card as leverage. Thanks a lot for the advice. I really hope that this will be temporary. Now, the one thing I have to say is that your boyfriend not consulting you is disgraceful. It's the worst part of this entire story so far. I cannot argue with that one bit. Now, this is important, and this is kind of what I've been saying, I suppose, the whole time. Somebody said, do they have any other options? Honestly, my boyfriend would do the same thing, and I love that about him. It really, really sucks that this is during such an important time in school, but if these people have nowhere to live, I don't see how turning them away isn't a little heartless. Of course, you might need to stay at your friend's house to get studying done, but is that such a horrible trade-off for helping a family with no home? That right there, right now, and by the way, there's more context and of course an update to come, is how I personally think. What do you guys think in the comments? This is a contentious one, and I think, there's no right or wrong answer here, but yeah, that is slightly the way I'm leaning right now, as you can probably tell. OP replied to this, saying, I think they do have options, but decided to turn to us because their family would be harder on them, push them to pay for themselves, get out soon. They both have family nearby. Ooh. In fact, the husband's rich family lives not far from us. However, they have already housed their family for a year and a half after she got pregnant at 18. And according to my boyfriend, they were annoyed at how they acted during that time and almost kicked them out. They finally caved and actually bought the house that they lived in so they could get out. I just can't deal with irresponsible adults in addition to a toddler in my small apartment. As others have pointed out, they can get support from the FEMA or even stay at a local shelter. Hundreds of people are doing this. If they need money or food, I'll gladly send it to them, but I can't offer up my space due to many reasons. I'm sorry if you see this as heartless, but I get the feeling that you would feel differently if you were actually put into my situation. That is super valid, and I do completely agree with that. If I was in that spot, it would be different, and it's impossible to say how I'd act or feel if I was actually physically in OP's shoes. So, it's tough, but I'm also thinking like, yeah, they can get support. Yeah, they can go and stay at a shelter, but you don't want to do, like, it's so much nicer to stay at a friend's house when you've already gone through so much, right? I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the update. This was posted just the next day. I never thought I'd be updating so fast, but everything was resolved in one of the most hectic and stressful nights of my life. Shout out to all of my supporters out there. You guys made my day yesterday. And to those of you calling me heartless because I don't think offering our living space up is a good idea when I've said that I'm willing to support them in any other way, F you. And by the way, guys, I'm not calling her heartless at all. Like, I completely get it. I was just saying, I think sometimes you got to make sacrifices for other people, and they can be very brutal, but so is your home burning down. Anyway, the pregnant wife, husband, and toddler arrived at our apartment last night around 9:30 p.m. They'd already told us on the way that their toddler contracted some kind of food poisoning and wasn't feeling well, which is what delayed them. Me and my boyfriend go down to greet them, and we realize they have so much luggage. There were 2 large suitcases, a duffel bag, and like 4 Trader Joe's shopping bags filled with random stuff and half-eaten food. Okay, cool. That's going to be fun, lugging up the stairs. I hate that from OP. What are you talking about? Obviously they have stuff. Like, their home's burned down. What are you expecting them to have? Just like only the clothes that they're in? Obviously they're going to have like some form of suitcase that you're going to have to carry upstairs. Like, that tone is, I don't agree with that. Anyway, let's carry on. So my boyfriend and the husband starts to bring their stuff up while I stay back and half carry the pregnant wife up the stairs because she feels too tired and nauseous. We get upstairs and I ask where Jake, the toddler, is, and the wife realizes she forgot to unbuckle him from the car seat and left him in there. She asked if I could go down and grab him. I wanted to say, not my forgotten toddler, not my responsibility, but alas, I decided to try to be gracious, at least for the first day. So I went down and unstrapped the toddler, who looked visibly sick. Again, like, I know these people might not be the best people or the best parents based on your experience before, but their home has just burned down and she is pregnant. She needs help. There were literally 2 bags of vomit, OP continues, next to him, which I removed from the car and threw in the trash because it would have been forgotten and become a severe health hazard. I tried to see if he can walk, and he started crying and started dragging himself on the ground, so I picked him up and carried him up the stairs. I set the kid down next to our couch, and Lord Almighty, this kid did not look good. His cheeks were flushed really red. There was dried vomit caked on his face, and his breathing seemed quick. I feel his forehead, and it feels really hot to the touch, so I run to the bathroom to get a thermometer. While I'm digging for the thermometer, I hear, "Again? Are you freaking kidding me, Jake?" So I rush out, and indeed, frickin' heck, the tot has thrown up all over our carpet. I wanted to cry. I run to the kitchen to grab paper towels, but the pregnant wife was already using some sort of napkin or cloth to sop it up, but she was smearing it and making it worse, and I wanted to die. I came to help her, and the tot is screaming at this point, while she is yelling at him to shut the F up. My boyfriend and the husband came over to help, but the wife told them to go away because she's got it handled. The wife asks if I would mind taking him to the bathroom to rinse him, and the only reason I say yes is because I'm seriously worried about the kid. I strip him and run warm water in our tub and put him in. Then I put a thermometer in his mouth, and lo and behold, he has a temperature of 106 degrees. Not a good sign at all. That, paired with symptoms of vomiting, rapid breathing, and looking really lethargic, is a combination good enough for the ER. So I yell for the mother to get to the bathroom and ask her where she thinks he got the food poisoning from. She says she doesn't know, he's just eaten fruit for the past 2 days. I'm freaking out because his symptoms are consistent with meningitis. The poor kid keeps grabbing his head and crying, so clearly he's got a headache too. I ask her if she's gotten him vaccinated for meningitis, and she said she doesn't think he's been vaccinated at all. I'm going into panic now. I feel Jake's neck and I try to ask him slowly if he feels like it's difficult to move. He just cries more. I ask her to call for my boyfriend and husband and explain the situation to them, and the husband confirms the baby has not been vaccinated for the meningococcal back. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it's a no-brainer at this point. I tell them how life-threatening this infection is and that it may leave Jake paralyzed. The wife bursts into tears and gives the okay, so all 4 of us, plus Jake, get in their car to drive to the ER. My boyfriend is driving and I'm in the back cradling Jake and checking for rashes on his arms and legs with a cell phone flashlight. The wife is still crying. I'm close to crying. We finally get to the ER and I tell them there is a 2-year-old with symptoms blah 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 with no vaccination for meningitis and we suspect he has it. They immediately bring him in and asked me if I was the parent, and I said no and pointed to the wife who was trailing behind me in tears. They brought her in with the toddler and told me to stay in the waiting area. At this point, I take my first breath. 5 minutes later, the husband and my boyfriend come rushing in and I tell the husband to go and talk to the staff so they could bring him in. He does, and my boyfriend comes to hug me, and F it, I just started bawling my eyes out. He keeps telling me he's sorry and that it's his fault. I'm still crying into him. He calls an Uber for me and tells me to go home and get some sleep and that he'll handle the rest. I'm too tired to resist, so I get home at like 12 AM, brush my teeth, and just crash after I got a text saying they put him on antibiotics and they're waiting for blood test results and the culture, but that he was stable. I wake up the next morning at like 10 AM and the apartment is like super quiet and my boyfriend isn't in bed next to me. So I get up and walk into our living area and I see him sleeping on the couch and not a single luggage bag or pregnant wife in sight. I nudge my boyfriend awake and he tells me everything that happened. The toddler is in the ICU and my boyfriend managed to get a hotel nearby for them for half the price after telling them what happened. He paid for a week-long stay for them and then helped move everything out of the apartment and to the hotel with the husband while the wife was at the hospital. He kept saying he was sorry and that he didn't think anything through and for me to forgive him. I said it was okay and I hugged him. It turned out to be one heck of an experience I don't ever want to relive again, but I'm glad that Jake is safe and I'm glad they won't be living with us. Okay, so that is the end of the update. OP has just added a few more key points as well for further context. So the pregnant wife, husband and toddler, she says, chose to drive over 600 miles to live in our 2-bedroom apartment instead of living with the husband's wealthy, only around 200 miles away, family, who were also the ones to pay for their house and house them for 2 years. I have my suspicions as to why this is the case, but you make your own judgments. And finally, the pregnant wife's behavior is no different than normal. I've been to their house multiple times. I can confirm that she curses at her child, drinks while pregnant, and is unable to adequately care for the child. Alright, let's jump into some comments before I give my final thoughts. To be honest, I'm not even sure what I'm thinking right now, so hopefully these comments will give me some sort of clarity, and maybe you guys as well. Somebody said, kudos for catching on that Jake was sick. I'm glad he's on the mend. Probably was a good thing that initially they did go there so you could catch it. It probably saved the kid's life. OP said, thanks, I'm really glad it happened too. Somebody else said, you are a freaking hero. I started crying just reading this. I live in Alberta, and a couple of years ago, a couple here killed their son by ignoring vaccines and medical care. He had meningitis. It was heartbreaking, and it's still going through the court system. This couple literally owes you their son's life. Get freaking vaccinated, people. Now, OP replied to this saying, thanks, but I'm not a hero, but yes, please get vaccinated. And interestingly, somebody below this said, I thought the meningitis vaccine wasn't approved for kids until they are 11 in the US. And I think I've seen that as well. It even might be a little bit older than that in some states. I'm not entirely sure on that. Let me know in the comments down below. But Opie replied, some infants and toddlers can get it if they suffer from some deficiencies, autoimmune disorders, or are HIV positive. Okay, sure, but as in, the point being, the fact that they didn't have the vaccine yet, this toddler, was not an abnormal thing at all. As most kids, well, I don't know, according to that comment, you can't get the meningitis vaccine before the age of 11. Somebody else said, sometimes things happen for a reason. It seems like this happened to you so you could save a life. Bad experience for you, good for the kid. Yep, I'm thankful that I was able to catch on to a few of his symptoms, OP said. I'm no doctor by any means, but meningitis is an incredibly scary infection. I'm glad I urged them to go to the ER. But I must say, I lost a lot more respect for the family from this experience. Somebody else said, I wouldn't have known. My kids are all fully vaccinated and I'd barely heard of meningitis. Probably because it's been vaccinated against. I'm a generation who never had to deal with it. Somebody replied, yeah, but a kid who's repeatedly throwing up, lethargic and with a fever of 106 is very sick. It's one thing to not know it's meningitis. It's another to forget him in the car and scream, shut the F up at him while he cries. That being said, her house had just burnt down, so I'd add a little forgiveness for mitigating circumstances. Great comment. That is a perfect comment right there. Because yes, I completely agree. Screaming shut the F up at your toddler who is clearly extremely sick is ridiculous. But then with the context of knowing that your house has just burned down and dealing with that, yeah, mitigating circumstances 100%. But then OP said to this, and maybe this is the main point. What's sad is that that is how she regularly treats the kid. I've witnessed her swear at him multiple times. She also leaves him home alone while she goes out drinking. Okay, there we go. So much to unpack there. I'm going to try and sum it up and give my thoughts as well as I can. But give me a break. This is going to be tough. Okay, so there we go. You know what? I actually think that with the context now of knowing that this woman is clearly just not a good mum, if we're taking everything that OP says as gospel here, right, which I'm going to do because you kind of have to, then it sort of explains, well, it does explain, let me say, why OP has sort of reacted in this way the entire time. First of all, we have the fact that, yeah, she's just like goes out drinking while pregnant, leaves her 2-year-old kid abandoned at home, etc., etc. That is just disgraceful. Secondly, the fact that they have family nearby, or much nearer by, about a third of the distance away, that are wealthy. They've lived with them before, and you know, they could easily live with them again, surely. I mean, like, you know, if you've lived with somebody before and your house has burned down, they're gonna let you live with them again. So all of that sort of new context, I suppose, is definitely valid reasons for OP to say, you know what, I know what you've been through here, but I don't want you living with us because you don't need to live with us, and also we're not in the right sort of space to deal with you. So with all of that being said, I do sort of get what OP is saying a lot more than I did at first. I was just sort of taken aback by, in my opinion, the lack of understanding at first from OP. You know, their house has just burned down. I mean, how many times have I said that? You've got to make sacrifices for people in that situation. But yes, maybe not these people. And I think that's the key point. And the more that I read here, the more context we got, the more I'm realizing that it's not about their house burning down actually at all. It's the fact that these people are not good people probably. And OP just really doesn't value them at all. Yeah, if it was another set of people whose house had burned down that were good parents and really did have no other options, then OP would be much more inclined to sacrifice. I think that's kind of what I'm understanding here. Let me know if I'm wrong, if you are getting different sort of points from OP, but I think that is the gist of things. And yeah, I suppose it makes sense. I'm still a bit like, oh, just let them stay with you. But I guess if like they're not even seeing that their kid is dying in front of them, then probably pretty terrible people. Although you did save a life, take solace from that. And again, I do agree with that one comment about the mitigating circumstances. It's tough to know. There's a lot going on in the story. I'm still not 100% sure what I think, but yeah, you guys let me know in the comments down below what you think. What's interesting is that some people in the comments of this are like, they're not they're not buying it fully. So I want to put this comment on screen. I do want to end with this because I'm not sure if this all adds up, to be honest. I've just sort of semi-skimmed through it again. Let's put this on screen. Am I the only one whose BS sensors are going off? Some things just aren't adding up here. OP somehow picked up diagnosis of meningitis from the few symptoms. Vomit, fever, headache. That's fair. I mean, meningitis is very rare these days. So to immediately jump to that is either very impressive or not 100% true. Then somehow she had time to throw 2 bags of vomit from the car into the trash because it would become a severe health hazard otherwise, all while managing to get a sick toddler out of the car. I think that's all believable, by the way. Yet she actually left the vomit in the carpet of her own home until the next morning, which her boyfriend cleaned up, according to her comments later on. Also, she was trying to paint the parents as some type of anti-vaxxers, but the vaccine isn't even available for 2-year-olds. I think that is a good point. And if the mum was really the type to drink while pregnant and leave her 2-year-old at home so that she could party, you would think that OP would have stepped up and done something about it by now. That's probably like the extreme other way of looking at this story, thinking, okay, let's actually really think about this critically. Again, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I do slightly get what this comment is saying though. Like, and it's always tough with Reddit because you're only ever reading, well, most of the time, one person's perspective on things. I mean, I'd love to hear from the other couple in this. Ideally from the toddler. I mean, what illness did they really have? But yeah, there we go. I've waffled for too long. Am I the jerk for refusing to drop charges in exchange for saving my family? So the original post for this one came back in September of 2024. I am a 33-year-old man, and I met my wife, who is also 33, in college. It was a long-term physical relationship that turned serious at the end of our senior year. After graduation, I didn't have plans, so I decided to move to her hometown, major southern city. I didn't know anybody, so we were together 24/7 and moved in together within a year. During this time, I met her family a few times. She had a huge extended family, where her mum, Sharon, was the matriarch. Her dad died in a workplace accident, and her mum got a lot of money. She was smart and invested and is doing well. All of Sharon's siblings and nieces and nephews look to her for advice on all major life decisions. She's paid for school, weddings, and helped start businesses. My wife has 2 brothers who I always got along with. We'd hang out independent of my wife a few times a year. We got married after 3 years, and when my son was born, Sharon bought us a house 3 blocks from hers. We'd lived in a downtown loft-style apartment, and this was honestly a relief. But with the house came Sharon constantly being in my life, coming in the house unannounced, unsolicited advice, and snide remarks at my expense. Eventually, 18 months later, we had a blow-up fight, and I moved my family across town to an apartment. My wife was annoyed, and our relationship has deteriorated. Sharon hates me and has turned most of their family against me. I didn't see or go to any of her family events for over a year. My wife still saw her family, but because I wasn't invited and they were over 30 minutes away, it was much less. Sharon went from seeing her grandson almost every day to once a month. So of course, her hate for me went through the roof. The incident. My wife had to work, and I was asked to take my son to his cousin's birthday party. The party was at Sharon's house, and if it wasn't my son's first cousin, 6 months apart, I would have said no. It was tense the moment I walked in. Father of the birthday boy, my brother-in-law, greeted me, but nobody else spoke to me. I didn't mind, I just sat in the corner on my phone. This apparently annoyed Sharon because I was being rude. An argument ensues, and I announced that I'm leaving with my son. Sharon said, "You can go, but my grandbaby is staying." At this point, I lost my cool and I started cursing her out. I woke up on the front lawn. Apparently, my 2 brother-in-laws beat the trash out of me in front of my kid. 2 of her cousins were helping me up and told me just to leave. I immediately called the police and said that I was assaulted and my child was kidnapped. The police came and both brothers were arrested. Sharon lost her mind on the police, and my wife drove up as her mother was being arrested for refusing to release my son. Her mum was eventually released, but her brothers were arraigned on assault charges. Now, the father of the birthday boy had an assault charge from college, so he is facing some serious consequences. My wife is mad at everyone, but asked me to drop charges. I not only refused, but I got restraining orders for all 3 of them. Her mother isn't allowed to be near our kid, and her brothers have court dates early next year. I told her I would think about it, but I think I would rather get divorced. I honestly want to keep my family, but I don't believe she'll ever abandon her family for me. If I drop charges now, I doubt I can bring them back later. So, am I the jerk for not trying to save my family? Okay, before we get into the update for this one, and there is actually a little edit from OP as well, in which he tells how his wife found this post as it blew up overnight on Reddit when it was originally posted. Let's first of all jump into some comments because we get a little bit more information from OP there as well. So OP has replied to a comment saying about how the state should press charges, or in theory always would press charges, not the victim. He says, I just want to comment on this because it keeps coming up, and you are 100% right. In the initial confrontation, the cops asked if I wanted them arrested, and I said yes. I was more bruised than bloody, and they were willing to let it go as a family dispute. That's where the "what did you expect to happen" conversation came from. I'm not pressing charges per se, but I'm not letting it go. I've done 2 interviews with the police, and I've been fully cooperating. If I stopped, they might drop the charges because they seemed more annoyed than helpful. I doubt the younger brother will get more than a slap on the wrist. My wife's oldest brother, though, with the prior, is in a lot more trouble. He is the one that everyone is worried about. Also, Sharon never went to jail. When my wife arrived, Sharon was being escorted to a car. My wife and her 2 uncles got Sharon to calm down and they let her go. She wasn't being violent, but she was cursing and blocking them from entering the house. The only thing positive about the arrest, and Sharon's almost arrest, was it made getting a restraining order way easier. But even that took a month. Also, I'd never talked to a lawyer for any reason, or had any trouble with police. I honestly don't know how any of this works. I just found out the difference between parole and probation a few weeks ago. Now, somebody else made a comment about Sharon, which OP replied to. They said, Sharon is not a good mother. Her habit of buying everything for everyone is robbing her grown children of having their own achievements, which builds character, mental toughness, maturity, and pride in themselves. A better parent would have matched their savings for down payments. Obviously, there was a price to be paid for her investments in their lives. She's able to make major decisions in their lives. She's able to walk right in like she owns the place because she does. It sounds like she is an overbearing, iron-fisted, suffocating presence in their lives. OP replied to this, saying, I keep feeling like I'm defending this woman, but trust me, I'm not. She started flipping houses in the 90s before it was a thing. She always kept her job as a nurse and kept investing in new properties. She helped both her brothers start their own construction business, and 5 nieces and nephews now work in real estate. Her 2 smartest moves were 1, she was an early iPod user from her time as a nurse and invested heavy in Apple stock in 2002. And 2, she pulled out of big real estate investments in 2006, a little early, and sat on her money until 2010. Then she bought up a ton of property. That is to say, the woman is smart and accomplished, so everyone sees her as this messiah of wisdom. So when she deemed me a jerk for not wanting her in my house constantly, and then a bigger jerk for moving my family across town, everyone fell in line. If Sharon thinks he is bad, then he must be bad. Okay, now let's get into the edit that OP left on this. He says, this blew up overnight. It was actually my wife's cousin who DM'd me because she found it. She was there that day and told me to add some more context because her family is getting destroyed in the comments. She's right, so here are a few more things. 1, I don't think anyone is evil in this situation. Everyone loves Sharon and her advice, except me. She's not a mean person, but we are polar opposites in many ways. My wife is the baby, an only girl, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with our conflict. Sharon losing her mind on the police was uncharacteristic, and even I was surprised. My wife is a great mum and partner, but her inability to be independent of her mum's influence is our issue. She is mad at her brothers and isn't talking to either. She's also mad at her mum for starting the argument and refusing to release our son. She's just trying to find a middle ground. I genuinely think she hopes a fresh start can save our marriage. Until we moved into that house, I'd say our relationship was good. As far as her brothers and the assault goes, I remember the first hit, but I was dazed immediately. The last thing I remember was flailing like a child while getting hit a few more times. What I don't remember is my kid screaming to "Stop hitting my daddy!" and then picking me up and dropping me on the lawn like trash. I have to acknowledge that my pride hurt more than my bruises. I genuinely liked both her brothers, and to be fair, F you and female dog came out of my mouth when I cursed out Sharon. I'm not 100% innocent. This is the South, so the police even said, "What did you expect to happen?" Oh, okay, that is where the "what did you expect to happen" comment comes from. I don't know if I stop pursuing this, if it would continue or not. Okay, so there we go. That is it for the initial post. We did, however, get this update 4 months later, just a week ago at the time of recording, January the 20th, 2025. Hello. Let me start by saying thank you to the supporters and F you to the jerks. Reddit is one heck of a place to get perspective on things. The only place you could be called a good father and a cuck in the same thread. I don't think I've ever related or just completely supported a point more than that. That is brilliant. I've been wanting to write an update and answer questions for a while, but after my original post, many Reddit lawyers reached out and told me to stop talking immediately. Since things were very uncertain and my divorce wasn't settled, I decided to not respond or update anything until things calmed down. A lot has happened to so many people involved, so I think I'm just going to break it down by person, starting off with myself. I moved back to the West Coast, where I'm originally from. I decided to move forward with the divorce, so I moved home. Furthermore, I had nothing left for me in that city, as I only had a few friends, my son, and a lot of bad memories. My ex and son cried a lot the day I left, and that hurt my soul, but it was best for all parties involved. So, I moved back home to be around my family and my support system. I got a good paying job, and I'll be subletting a 2-bedroom apartment starting next month. My son spent the holidays with me, staying with my parents, and I plan to see him on Easter. Going forward, laid out in our custody agreement, my son will stay with his mother until he is 12. I'll get him Easter and summers, and we'll switch Christmas and Thanksgiving every year. When he's 12 and needs a father figure, he'll come and live with me until he's 18. What? When he's 12 and needs a father figure, he'll come and live with me until he is 18. I'm not like OP, I've been on your side the entire time here. I don't get this at all, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and I'll give my thoughts at the end. Anyway, I talk to my son every day on the phone for at least an hour, and I'll try to fly out there a few times a year. I can't shake the feeling that a piece of me is missing, and I wish it was just my son, but I miss my wife too. Now on to my ex-wife. So the divorce is basically settled, and I obviously didn't move away with her. In the end, she saw my post and saw the comments and realized that she shouldn't have asked me to stop pursuing the case. She asked again, saying, "We could move and just get away from my family." Too much had happened though, and our relationship was a shell of what it was. We both said and did things we forgave but can't forget. I wish this was a movie and I could just say love conquers all or screw her, she's evil, but that isn't real life. I'm torn between both loving this person and knowing we aren't right for each other. While she didn't want to move forward with the divorce, she didn't fight me on it either. We were able to settle everything without lawyers and only use them for paperwork and fine details. We talk daily because of our son, and she says she is doing well, but last time I FaceTimed her, I can tell she isn't eating. My sister said it's post-breakup hotness, whatever that means, but she looks more sick than hot. She hasn't spoken to her brothers since that day and blames them a lot for what happened. She and Sharon's relationship is also very strained and they barely talk as well. Ironically, she is hardly speaking to the family that she was so desperately trying to keep together. I honestly wish she would talk to her family again because I do worry about her a lot. People were very mean to my ex-wife, saying she was a terrible mother and wife. I think she lives for and would die for her family, and all her actions were to keep us together. She told me her 2 biggest regrets were moving into Sharon's house and moving out of our apartment. Those 2 actions caused most of our problems. She's a great mother to my child and I will always have her back. Now for the brothers. I didn't expect much as far as punishment in this case. They both pled out to a simple assault which only had minimal consequences. Both of them spent a night in jail, got fines and anger management. The older brother had a prior incident that I mentioned earlier. That was a bar fight in his early 20s. He hit a guy with a bottle and got an assault charge. But since that case was over 15 years ago, and he's married, a pillar of the community, etc., he was given probation for a year, and that was that. Both brothers have partners in life, and the oldest one is married. I've known his wife for many years, and we've always been friendly. Because of the restraining order, both spouses reached out on behalf of the brothers to speak to me. I barely knew the younger brother's girlfriend, but since I knew the wife, I spoke to her. She said both brothers regretted their decision, and she asked me to lift the restraining order and not pursue charges. We had a brief conversation, but I simply told her I don't forgive her husband and brother-in-law, and I'm moving forward with both. As we ended the conversation, I told her to not call me again, and I haven't heard from either brother since. I don't know anything beyond what the ex tells me, and she's not speaking to them. So, Sharon. I did have it out with Sharon, and it went about as well as you can imagine. Here is a little backstory to our relationship. Let's start by saying that my ex and her family are devout Christians who go to church weekly. I'm a lapsed Catholic who goes to church 3 times a year. I live a very moral and ethical life, but my belief system isn't centered on the church. Furthermore, I consider myself a moderate liberal, and their family is moderate conservatives, i.e., I'm down the Second Amendment and Sharon supported gay marriage. Ideologically, we were far apart, but we agreed on the important things in life. The real problems began when my son was going to be baptized. My mum wanted to get our son baptized Catholic, and Sharon wanted him baptized Protestant. Lots of snide remarks about Catholics were said, but I let it go at the time. The ex and I decided to wait and let our son decide, which Sharon hated. When my ex started going back to church and I wasn't in attendance, that further widened the divide. Her family would go by Sharon or someone else's house after church for lunch and dinner, and I either showed up later or not at all. Every time Sharon didn't agree with the decision we made as a couple in regard to our lives, especially my son's life, she would start leaning on my wife and pressuring her behind the scenes. We would literally make a decision and she would go to her mum's house and then come back with a different opinion. The most frustrating part is she stopped trying to talk to me at all. She would literally just call my wife and get her to change her decision. The big fight that led us to moving out was that my son wanted to play soccer and not football. But good lad, by the way, a massively superior sport. Well done, that man. Let's carry on. But my wife's family is a huge football family. We agreed for him not to play football because he didn't want to play and are concerned about CTE. My wife comes home one day and does a 180, saying that she signed him up for football. We start arguing and Sharon comes in the house unannounced and joins in the conversation, saying, "We decided it would be good for him." I got annoyed. I told them, Sharon is not my son's parent, and my ex shouldn't be so weak when her mum is pressuring her to do something that we decided not to do. Then she said the words that sealed the deal. "My opinion should matter. I bought the house." I started looking for a new apartment that night, and I never looked back. So when we talked, neither of us raised our voices, but it wasn't a nice conversation. I started, and I apologized for calling her a female dog, and she apologized for trying to keep my son without my permission. She flat out told me she wished my daughter never met me and that I've ruined her family, that her sons have criminal records now, one already did, and that's all my fault. She then started crying about not seeing my son and how she lost her only daughter. I told her she was manipulative and used her money to control the family, that she only didn't like me because she couldn't control my decisions like her weak-willed family. I also told her she consistently overstepped her bounds in regards to my child and my marriage, and she put her own selfish interest ahead of her daughter's happiness. After spending an hour calling each other jerks in different ways, we ended things in the same place. In the end, I told my ex that her mum could see my son because Sharon loves him unconditionally and he loves her. Call me stupid, but I think family is a big part of your upbringing. My mum isn't around him enough, and every child needs a good grandma. The ex said that she'd been to a few family situations that were hard to avoid. Wedding, funeral, Thanksgiving, but she leaves when her brothers come and my son doesn't leave her side. Sharon has seen my son and he's played with his cousin, the birthday boy from the original story, but she's keeping him from the family for the time being. Okay, now on to my son. He is having a hard time with everything. It's not the fight, he thinks we were wrestling. He misses me a lot and cries on some of our phone calls. He's in therapy, and all the sessions are about missing his dad and why we can't live together. It's been a few months, and it is slowly getting better, but we've ruined his childhood, and I take my share of responsibility in that. Now finally, the cousin. She is my wife's first cousin, but they are more like sisters. Sharon is her aunt by marriage, and she was the first to warn me about the family. She was also eviscerated by the comment section for having me add to the story. She told me I was out of line for calling Sharon a female dog, but didn't feel I deserved to get beat up. Likewise, she also grabbed my son when the fight happened and took him away. She was the one who told my son we were wrestling, and she called my wife to come immediately. When Sharon was being handcuffed, the cousin came outside holding my son. I told her to give him to me, but she pointed at my swollen face and asked if she could hold him. I trusted her enough in that situation to care for him, so I respected her enough to add those details. She didn't deserve the trashy comments either. I presume, I didn't actually see any of that myself, guys, but I presume that, people were getting a little bit annoyed on Reddit for, the cousins saying to OP, no, you need to add these details. It's making the family look terrible. But yeah, I suppose with this additional information and context, we can see that the OP does trust his cousin in this regard and during the story. So then, the conclusion. In the end, everyone in their family read the original post. But because of divorce and assault cases, no one directly contacted me other than my ex. It wasn't a hit, to say the least, but I only care that it hurt my ex's feelings. I think seeing everything written out from my perspective opened her eyes. Obviously, some things were left out and broad strokes were made to explain complex situations. In the end, she said I didn't lie, but she thinks I painted her family in a horrible light. We thought about writing a joint update, but we're not talky enough to make that happen. I told my ex about this post, and I asked if she wanted to read it before I posted it, and she told me to just write whatever I want. Nobody won here, we all lost. Okay, so that is it for the post and the update. However, I've picked out a couple of comments that I think are very important, and I want to speak about myself. But first of all, somebody has asked, and I think, as you can tell when I was reading that, this was sort of the main thing that I had to interject and actually speak about and question. Somebody said, I understand everything else, but did you really have to abandon your kid? OP replied, I knew I would get destroyed for this, but abandon is a strong word. I didn't abandon my son. I left for better opportunities in life for both of us, both mentally and financially. My chosen profession has more opportunities here. I was only there for my wife and child. My career picked up during the pandemic because I could work remotely, but in-office work is becoming mandatory again. I was already going to have to quit or move companies, so the timing was right. Also, my mental health is 10 times better now that I've left the city. For months, I gave my child fake smiles while trying to be a good father. I was a shell of the man I wanted to be. I'm still broken by what's happened, but I'm in a better place mentally. And in the long term, I'll be better financially. And I mean, you can probably guess what I'm going to say here, guys. This seems unbelievably selfish, and I will get to my thoughts in full. But someone replied to this saying pretty much the same thing. Quote, you left for better opportunities in life for both of us. For you though, yes, but actually for him, not really. OP then finally replied to this saying, yeah, your assessment of my situation is understandable, but me working for less money and being constantly unhappy isn't good for my son. If I could have stayed in state, trust me, I would have, but the economy is effed. I used all my savings to continue paying bills, and I live with my parents for free to start over. Maybe I could have found happiness there, but I didn't see it happening. We are co-parenting the best we can. Okay, so there we go. That is the end of the story. I have so much I want to talk about. But yes, the first thing I do want to focus on, and that is the reason I read those comments at the end, is that I can't help but feel that OP is just being very selfish here. The fact that he said that his own son doesn't need a father figure until 12 is so ridiculous. I actually thought he was joking for a second. But a kid not needing a father figure until they're 12, and then what? When they become 12, they then do need a father figure? Why 12, first of all? And secondly, are you dumb? Secondly, I'm not sure I agree with like the I need to do this for me. Yeah, if I'd stayed, I would have been with my kid, but it would have been worse for him. And yeah, maybe worse financially, sure. But I don't think it would have been worse for him mentally you staying around and him not crying and wondering where his dad is and going through therapy because his dad isn't there. It also, and I think this is probably the main thing, it sounds as if, according to your ex, like she was fine with that as well. It wasn't as if she was the one that was like, no, I don't want you to be in his life at all. You can only see him, like 3 times a year, which is ridiculous. It sounded as if she was like, pretty chill with you still being in her life and his life. And maybe, I don't know, but maybe she didn't even want the divorce in the first place after realizing just what had gone on and potentially the way that her mum had manipulated her for all those years. Who knows about that? But yeah, it wasn't as if you were shoved out of your son's life. You just chose not to be in it anymore, which I think is very selfish. Like, isn't that sort of the point of being a parent? You sacrifice yourself a lot of the time for the future or even just the current like well-being of your children. I don't know. I'm not a dad, but I feel like any good dad would do that. I just want to go to one more comment here. And this is the main thing that all the comments are saying is just they cannot get over how messed up the custody arrangement is and how bad they feel for the boy because he's just in a terrible spot now. Somebody said, it's okay. The kid won't need a father figure until he's 12. And then they say, I look at my 11-year-old son, though, right now, who is right this moment absolutely idolizing his father. They spend time in the shed together, building things, working on cars and bikes. They play games together. They learn about Pokemon and dinosaurs together. They have boy jokes that us girls don't really find quite as funny as they do. Of course, if you're a boy, you know that. He talks about clothes he likes that dad wears, what kind of work he might do that dad can help teach him about. He's learning things from his dad that he could never from me, long before the age of 12. And so much of it can't be found in a daily hour-long phone call. And I scroll through all the comments, and they're the same. So, look, while reading that story, there were lots of things that I did want to talk about. But ultimately, do they even matter when your dad is just doing this to you and acting in this way? Not really. I mean, we know that every family has people that you don't get on with or that don't get on with each other, right? It's just like part and parcel of life. And there are always going to be crazy disputes. And on the one hand, you could say that Sharon is a bad person because she is so involved in everyone's lives. You could also argue the complete opposite, that she has given lots of her family so much and they owe her a lot. And I think that is, it's a pretty sort of like logical way of looking at it, but sorry, like if someone has given you a house, then you do owe them a lot. Like, yeah, I wouldn't like it if someone had keys and just came in at any moment and was deciding on every single decision that happened in my life. Of course, there's a line, but also you have a really nice house because of this woman for free. So there is that. But as I said, like, who really cares when OP, the dad, is acting like this? I don't know. I feel like that just sort of trumps everything bad that we've seen in the story that's going on, even with the brother-in-laws. I mean, look, you never want to get in a scrap, but if my dad was being beaten up, but then actually turns out he didn't want to be with me or raise me, would I really care? Not really. Don't know. It's probably a pretty cynical way of looking at it. I just think I find it hard to sort of feel for OP when he's seeing his kid 3 times a year out of choice.